Hello everyone, welcome to What If Quirkless Deku got Albedo's Ultimatrix and became Supreme Anti-Hero Part 3. Before we start, please go support Albedo 13003 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. Chapter 14, Hero Suits / Ready for Bomb Rematch. Point of View Narrator. In Izuku's laboratory, the constant sound of his Ultimatrix could be heard. He was lying on an armchair while he spoke and reprogrammed the dial of it. I would have to make a new polymorphic crystal to be able to create that physical body that you want, Izuku said, turning to look at Albedo, who snorted annoyed. How can they transform you into something really big but not have the Ultimatrix create enough matter for a body for me? Said Albedo with her arms crossed, while sitting in an armchair, which looks more like a throne. It's different. In the transformations of greater size than mine, it is not only transmuted energy to give me more mass, but it is also related to the spontaneous mutation of my body. Although you are right, I could, but I want to give you something special, not a simple body, said Izuku before continuing with his thing. Well, you could continue seeing how to solve the problem in the virtual simulation, said Albedo with annoyance. Albedo, I don't want to be in this simulator for longer than necessary. I don't want to confuse reality with fiction. Besides, I can develop disorders, and I remind you that my life is in this physical dimension and accessible to all my senses, Izuku said severely, to which she sighs. Well, I agree with you, but anyway, remember that you have to go to the academy today. In the meantime, he will be at rest knowing that deactivating the Ultimatrix so that it does not synchronize with the Omnitrix, said Albedo before her holographic body disappeared next to her throne. Izuku stood still in his spot, watching where Albedo was before sighing and looking up at the ceiling. This was one of those rare moments for him, when he reflects on his life and the moments he finds himself in. He just ended up sighing before laughing bitterly. Without a doubt, if they had told him in the past that he would obtain the maximum power of the universe, even tempted on a multiversal scale, he would never have believed those words. Besides, I also wouldn't have believed that I would have a bipolar, tsundere and quite provocative companion in several ways. Unfortunately, all of this ended up causing him problems that could harm him in the future. He would still have to find a way to break away from the League of Villains and eliminate any evidence of it when they were no longer useful to him. He sighed, knowing that all for one was problem number one. He rolled over in his chair and lay face down, now looking at his laboratory. He had to find a way to put the villain in his place so that he wouldn't harm him later. That reminded him of something. He got up from his chair and walked over to a table where he had pieces to assemble a device. I still have to improve the nanomachines, even get more materials. He lets out a sigh. How annoying! How I wish I could do something similar to alchemy and be able to improve my materials. He stands still looking at the end before hitting his head. Right, I have a transmuter, said Izuku before being enveloped by energy and red light, which only covered his silhouette. When the light disappeared, it revealed a bipedal alien, measuring around or perhaps 2 meters, with a long tail, long limbs, with 3 fingers on each hand and 2 on the feet. It has a kind of hump and its neck shows the shape of a column with spikes sticking out above. Tentacles come out of its mouth, while its eyes are attached to the sides of its mouth and head. It wears a black suit with red shoulders and a white part, black pants with white edges, reaching to the feet without covering its fingers, white ribbons with lines of red light on the thighs and calves being highlighted by a red piece. Above, a black and red trench coat, with red light edges and red lines on the arms of the sleeve. A black belt with a border of silver pieces is found on its waist and part of the stomach, where the symbol of the Ultimatrix is. As he tried to grab a metal thing that is there to be forged and build items that have metal parts in them, red electrical rays emerged from the alien's hand and the metal in his hand transformed into a dark silver metal, with a slight purple glow. Vibranium, one of the extremely rare metals that he now has in his hand, although it is not really what he is looking for. After all, his equipment and armor were not going to be purely of this material, but an alignment of several. Well, I don't have to go to the alien black market under the city in search of these things anymore. Good thing I remembered this way. I won't have to pay an arm and a leg to get materials anymore, Izuku said before returning to his human form and leaving the metal on the table. Beep beep. He sighed in annoyance as he heard the alarm on the wall. He knew what it was, and it was what reminded him that he had a life outside of that laboratory. He just walked over to an armchair next to where she was lying and grabbed his bag, before activating the Ultimatrix's clothing function, changing into his UA uniform. After that he went to the door and was surrounded by a red light. When it disappeared, it revealed what had become of it. It multiplied before one of them returned to human form, followed by the other. "Why is it always me?" the clone asked, returning to his human form. "You are slow to become human. Anyway, go to school and I will stay here progressing with the experiments," Izuku said, handing his backpack to his clone, who sighed annoyed. "Good," said the clone, taking his backpack, before transforming into Dark Master, to then be enveloped by its matter and disappear. Some time later. "Okay, students, after the bad and distressing news about All Might and after a week of vacation in mourning of what happened with our number one hero, today you have a special job. You have to make the costumes for Class 1A and 1B, with the forms that will be given to you below. After that, I want you to build equipment for combat and support. Since tomorrow you will have a practical question along with the General Resources class and the Hero class," Power Loader said to his students, who nodded. At that moment, some remote-controlled drones began to move and leave some papers on each student's table. Izuku just took his with boredom and read the names. Momo Yaoyorozu, Kane Midoriya, and Gwendolyn Tennyson. Leo Izuku passes himself before sighing. What he's missing is a spoiled and stupid sister, although he could make a costume for his best friend. Now that he thinks about it, he remembered that the Yaoyorozu were present at an event that marked him, although he doesn't remember which one. He didn't care and shrugged his shoulders before getting to work. He read his sister's application. It even had a basic sketch. Green suit with black lines, along with boots that reach up to the middle of the thigh, having a black color, tight and hooked to red sports shoes with a black metallic base, biceps-length gloves in white with green lines and green details, a metallic mouth cover, more similar to a gas mask, a yellow hair clip, and a hood that simulates rabbit ears made of resistant and flexible material, comfortable for the body so that it does not cause problems when moving, that it is not exotic, and add thermoregulators. J. Izuku snorted as he read what his sister wrote down and drew, recognizing it as an idea he had as a child for a hero costume. In fact, it's the same design he gave to her when they were 4 years old. And that just surprised him, his sister's memory capacity, and believing that her brain was not as developed as the average person, and this showed him that he was superior. Just smiling a little, he would also modify some things that were wrong and simple that are apart. He liked the rabbit ears, although he realized that it is a reference to All Might's lock of hair. He didn't care about that. Now that he imagined it, what would his villain costume version 2.0 be like with a hood with a rabbit ear? He liked the idea and he didn't see anything wrong with trying it. So I touch his medical patch and via thought, I send a message to his lab with his newly arrived idea. If another me, replied with a mug sticker with 2 thumbs up. Returning to what he was doing, he took the next request sheet, Momo Yaoyorozu. He scratched his head. He knows her because of how famous her family is. She even appeared on the news several times, but he never saw her face. But that wasn't what made him miss her. He remembered hearing for the first time when it was announced on the news that she was near the place or that her fight with X person was related to them, although now he didn't remember which one. Or he simply didn't care so much about that he didn't pay attention at all. He just ended up shrugging. Maybe when he sees her he'll know when he first saw her or what situation they found themselves in with him being Red Clock. So he proceeded to read what his order and suit design said. In order to use my quirk, unfortunately I need my skin to be open. I need a suit, but please, not lewd and vulgar. Here are my measurements and a sketch of what I want. Izuku tilted his head and read the information that Momo gave him. He never understood why boys were always interested in girls' measurements. Maybe it was to get clothes and give them to him as a form of courtship for reproduction, or at least that's what he thinks. After all, he only sees Hex as a way of reproducing so that human beings can continue to exist, and he was never interested in anything related to sentimental and hormonal things related to people's tastes and their sexual attraction. It was a useless subject, and he put it aside. Perhaps, in his mind, he would review it if he wanted his reproductive instinct to be activated. But leaving that aside, he just shrugged and looked at Yayoro's design. Simple, although from what he understands it is the type that would attract the attention of boys, and assuming that she is a wealthy girl with education, she would supposedly have to have some decency, and this would only embarrass her. Another thing is that the other day he saw a grape head jump towards a girl. Perhaps they are in the same class. So he saw nothing wrong with helping her add and change certain parts of her outfit and fix some problems he sees, and if she wanted, redesign it completely and add several ideas in which she can improve or add. After all, his peculiarity catches his attention, the ability to create matter by burning his fat, a unique and surprising ability, with colossal potential, limited only to the knowledge of its bearer. A knowledge that he has and would be happy to share. Lastly, he has no one to chat with apart from Albedo and who likes scientific, mathematical, biological subjects, etc. that he likes. Gwen didn't count either. Although she is intelligent, far above average, she is not at the level he is at after the tireless research of all these years. He even surpassed her in knowledge on the subject that made them become friends, astronomy, a scientific subject that he loved since he was a child. Was what accompanies him and encouraged him to improve and perfect Ultimatrix. Too bad he focused so much on obtaining power and never went to space to travel in it, or at least a small moonwalk. He smiled as an idea crossed his mind, to which he laughed. When he was one with his other self again, he would definitely do it. But leaving that aside, he had to concentrate on that hour, so he took the next and last paper, being Gwen's. Surprise me, Izuku. Habises, his friend is scary and he can guess several things. Although I understand it well, his quirk, Magical Master, allows him to control mana, an energy that he knows is found in all the environment, living or not, and in each of the living beings that live in the universe. And that each person has their level of control and sensitivity to mana. His quirk allowed him to control mana, which allowed him to cast spells. Unfortunately, he does not have the knowledge of mana, all of which was lost with each generation that the quirks spanned. Another thing, she didn't give her measurements to design something for her aunt. He sighed because of that, so surely the measurements of certain parts of her friend's outfit wouldn't come out right. That, and add to that the fact that she has no knowledge about women's clothing, or in itself. About fashion itself, and all the clothes she wears are literally what she saw the protagonists of the animes she watched wear. Sensei, where are the materials? Izuku asked Power Loader, who pointed to a giant closet. Izuku moved there and opened it, sweating nervously to see, along with materials such as metals and plastics, along with glass and fabric of various materials, both leather, cotton, silk, etc., along with a sewing tool. Do you need help? Albedo asked, amused in her mind. Yes. Izuku whispered, taking what he needed, before moving to his workbench. Just let me control your arms, I'll take care of the rest. Albedo spoke again in the mind of her bearer, who was leaning slightly. Some time later. Okay, students, I have to admit, you did a great job with the suits. Tomorrow they will be delivered to your classmates from the heroic course. In the meantime and until classes end, I'll let you make whatever you want, or simply review for your next subjects, said the energy charger before sitting in his seat. Everyone got excited at that, and several of them started to play or talk amongst themselves, without making too much noise. And a few of them started to make up some ideas that came to their mind. Bad boy, Izuku muttered in annoyance, as he looked through his eye patch at the message from his other self, along with a message that he sent him on behalf of his mother. Izuku, when your classes are over, go directly to the supermarket and buy what's on the list. Inko. You're in charge. Izuku too. Izuku sighed with an eye, so to calm himself down he decided to build something. Going to a metal cabinet far away, he opened it and looked through what he had, raising an eyebrow to see a box with the name, Nanomachines. Nanomachine, said Izuku with a smile, and taking the box, along with a small black box that he had next to him, surely some board or Arduino at a distance that would help him interact with the nanorobots. So once he had that in hand, he went to his work table, already having something to play with. He decided to open the box and connect the little box to his phone and activate the programs that were on it. When he saw a loading screen finish on his phone, he picked it up and an interface appeared, showing him various programming options, even controls. He began to control them and shape them into what he had, creating 5 warring kingdoms, and activated some butterfly effect, randomness, evolution, adaptability and case functions before putting his phone aside and leaning back at his table, watching civilizations evolve, grow and expand, with other nanomachines functioning as a reminder. From trees, antlers to minerals and food. Wow! I didn't know there were nanomachines. With them I could create big babies, said a person next to Izuku, who, confused, blinked his only visible eye and turned to see who it was. A girl with pink hair, eyes with a pupil identical to that of a flank shooter, wearing a mechanical work suit, with gloves and a kind of glasses with some on her head, functioning without being used as a headband. WTF, and it's random. Izuku wondered, surprised. Although he blushed from nerves and discomfort when she attached herself to him to see the nanomachine realms. Ha ha ha, amazing! How did you do it so fast? She asked excitedly and with a smile. Well, I usually use and work with them at home, so I already have some programs and modes on my phone that allow me to quickly access the nanomachines, said Izuku. Unconsciously and on impulse, he took his phone and showed the girl his program related to the nanomachines. Wow, you are amazing, your baby is amazing, said the girl with her eyes turning into stars. Trying so, Izuku only saw her blankly as a blush appeared on his freckled cheeks. How did you say? Izuku asked, stuttering. Although he didn't really understand what she meant by baby, he felt strange at the girl's words. You're amazing! I've never seen anyone do something like what you did, she exclaimed. Izuku laughed nervously and looked away at the miniature kingdom. You think? This is not a big deal for me. I've done better work than this, Izuku said sadly. This was the first time in his life, not counting Albedo and Gwen, who was not with him for years and they were only friends since they were 8 before she left for the US at 10 years old, while with Albedo being somewhat professional, apart from already being accompanied to those heights by her, that someone told him that he did a good job and congratulated him for it. Did you do better work than this? Could you show me your babies? Asked the girl animatedly and taking Izuku's hands, who blushed furiously. Hey, don't you think you're going too far? At least 10 cents for your name? Izuku asked, speaking quickly so as not to stutter. Oh, sorry, I got carried away. My name is Mei Hatsum, said the pink-haired girl with a smile. Well, it's a pleasure, Hatsum-san. My name is Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said with a smile and a slight blush of shame and embarrassment. It's a pleasure, Midoriya-san. Then how about we talk more about babies? She asked, to the Izuku already returning to normal, tilting her head in confusion. Babies? He asked, surprised and confused. Yes, babies, the inventions that each of us make and that are our creations, therefore, our children, and those are made by our babies. She responds, explaining her use of that word, to which Izuku laughed a little, covering his mouth elegantly. Well, I've never heard that before, not counting the use of AI, but anyway, to answer your question, yes, I'm here to talk about babies, Izuku said, now animated, even putting quotation marks around the word baby. The girl is excited with great enthusiasm, while Izuku feels a sense of fear and possible annoyance in the future. But you shouldn't get so close, I'm Quirkless, said Izuku in an attempt to alleviate that feeling, pretending to feel sorry and sad. And so what? A quirk doesn't define how awesome an inventor can be, Mei said excitedly and enthusiastically, causing Izuku to blush deeply in embarrassment. Unfortunately for him, it did not alleviate the dread and annoyance that he could feel just around the corner. Time skip. Damn, Mei asked me so many questions yesterday that it made my head hurt. As soon as I got out of class, I bought what the old lady wanted and came home exhausted. His stomach growls. Damn, I didn't have dinner yesterday and I didn't even have breakfast today. I didn't have time to go to the lab for a drink and a recovery serum with alpha nutrients, Izuku thought, leaning on his arms and head on his work table in the UE workshop. Right now he wanted to kill his other self. Izuku! Someone called out, running towards him at high speed. Looking up, he saw Mei with a big, cheerful smile. Are you ready to make babies? She asked excitedly. That only caused several people in the place to jump, even causing a boy to spit his drink in his girlfriend's face. Izuku chuckled at that and listened to his new friend, who had just made the day before. Yes, although that would be after hearing the complaints about the hero course. Izuku said, smiling, before lying back down, while she sits next to him. What he said only caused a snort from everyone in the place. Now came the annoying part of listening to the arrogant people from the hero course who managed to get into it. After the test they would have during the following hours, surely several of them would come to complain about their costumes or demand a modification. Blaming them for saying that they were wrong about something, when they only made the costumes according to their drawings, and that surely they would not end up convincing them of their ideas. 0. Damn, this is really having a good vision about the heroes and optimism in themselves, Albedo said to herself to see the reactions of all the students in the classroom. It was the first time she saw so much lack of optimism in just one place. Ignoring that time when Izuku's old classmates tried to become heroes with their useless and pathetic quirks, she still laughed with great joy and pleasure remembering their crying. And then their screams of pain and terror when they tried to vent with Izuku and he broke more than one of their bones, being behind the academy without attracting anyone's attention. How come no one complained or made a complaint? Always. Who would believe that a Quirkless could take on 20 students at the same time and break several of their bones each and with gender equality? The story that everyone believed and that out of pride, those who suffered from Izuku's wrath did not deny, is that they started fighting and blaming each other, and saying that they were the reason why they did not enter the hero course. Without a doubt, she taught Izuku perfectly how to manipulate and use his disadvantages as an advantage. Something that she, Albedo, would be very proud of. Izuku, there's an emergency, Power Loader said as he entered the classroom. What's wrong, sensei? Izuku asked, getting up from his seat confused. 0. The idiot who was asked to pack the hero costumes brought the wrong suitcase. Places 3 suitcases on the table of the black-haired with green streaks. I need you to take these costumes to Momo Yaoyorozu, Kane Midoriya and Gwendolyn Tennyson. After all, they are the ones who you made their costumes. Apart from that, one is your sister and from what I understand Tennyson is your childhood friend, said Power Loader seriously. Izuku just watched with a blank face and a drop of sweat at the suitcases, feeling the irony of the situation. Fine, I'll take them, Izuku said before taking the suitcases. Can I help? She asked me curiously. If he wants. Power Loader responds calmly. I don't see any problems with it, take the Momo one, Izuku said, pointing to the suitcase closest to her, to which she nods and takes the suitcase. Okay, then go and come back quickly, so you can get ready for the practical exam, said Power Loader to the Yui. Both of them nod. They left their classroom and began walking down the hall. On the way, the Ultimatrix deactivated for any events that might happen near Gwen and Ben, while on Izuku's medical patch visor, a map of UA was drawn and showed him where the changing rooms were, where the owners of the suits in his hands were. It wasn't long before they arrived, where Mei would knock on the door and Izuku would turn around, looking directly at the wall. He doesn't know how to deal with women, and his luck with them isn't the best. An example would be the almost non-existent luck with his mother, the hatred that Tamura has for her, and sometimes when Gwen gets angry with him without him knowing the reason for it. Oni-chan, called Kane behind his back, to which he sighed without this being noticed. Izuku, said Gwen, confused to see her friend in the place. Here are the suits they forgot to give you, each one has its name. Deco. Izuku walking backwards and leaving the suitcases on the floor. Why is she acting like this? Asked Gwen with a poker face, drawing the attention of the other girls, some of whom even needed to change. I'm not stupid enough to look in there, and I'm not going to turn around, Izuku answers, crossing his arms in annoyance. Well then, thanks, see you in a bit for the practical exam, said Gwen with a smile, taking her suitcase. 0. Thanks, Oni-chan, said Kane, taking her suitcase. You're welcome, Izuku said, nodding his head. After that they both entered the dressing room, while a raven-haired girl approaches me. Excuse me, is that my suit? Momo asked curiously. Izuku heard her voice. It sounded familiar to him, but he still didn't turn around. Maybe she wasn't fully dressed and he just received a blow to the crotch. That reminded him of something. Sending a mental message through the visor that is his medical patch, he sent a message to his other self in the laboratory. Remember to put more defense between the legs, and you have a simpler copy to use freely wherever we are. Yeah, it's your hero suit, Mei said with a smile, handing the briefcase to Momo, who took it happily. Thanks, are you the one who did it? Momo asked curiously. Mei just shook her head. No, actually, all 3 of your outfits were made by my friend Izuku. Turns to see where Izuku is. Where did he go? Mei asked, confused to see that Izuku is no longer where he was. Mei, we're late. Sensei is going to get angry, Izuku said from a distance, which alarmed Mei. Yeah, well, see you later, Mei said before walking away from a confused Momo. She just watched them walk away when the pink-haired girl got next to the black-haired girl with green streaks. After that she entered the dressing room, noticing that she, Kane and Gwen were the only ones in the place, and that they were almost fully dressed. So he made our costumes, Momo said curiously. Yes. My Ani-chan is amazing, Kane said excitedly. That's right, although it tends to be annoying sometimes, said Gwen with a blush, while adjusting some stockings that only reached halfway up her thigh. Luckily, she had a pair of shorts, but that didn't cover her thighs completely. Is he a pervert? Momo asked, looking at Gwen's clothes, which are a little short in the thigh area. She just sighed at what Momo said and just shook her head. No, it's my fault. I focused more on annoying him and I ended up forgetting to give him my measurements, Gwen said, continuing to get dressed. Did she have to give measurements? Kane asked, confused. After all, her suit was made to her measurements, and as the sketches she sent said. Gwen looked at her with a cold gaze, as if saying, You are so extremely stupid. Kane looked away at that. Momo, who had already informed them and focused on her outfit, opened the suitcase and raised an eyebrow at the change in the design of her clothes. This is not what I ordered, Momo said, frowning. Let's see, Gwen said, approaching and looking at her new friend's clothes. Momo left the suitcase on a seat and began to take out the suit. She opened her eyes in surprise to see it better. Gwen laughed at the brunette's face, and Kane crossed her arms, pouting. You gave me something that's better to tell than what I had in mind. He sees something in the suitcase and takes it. Here's a note, Gwen said before reading it. Yayarosa-san, if you want your costume redesigned, better and updated to the times, just look for me in the support course. I'll literally be there all the time. Yeah, Ani-chan did it again, Kane said after hearing what Gwen said, who rolled her eyes at the green-haired girl's words. Well then try it, and let's see how well it goes in today's practices, said Gwen, patting Momo on the back, who was embarrassed. Some time later. Well, since everything is ready, we can begin, he said, all with a smile. Sensei, Tennyson-san, Yayarosa-san and Midoriya-chan are still missing, Uraraka said worriedly. Oh, I understand, so where are they now? I ask, everything could be confused. We are sorry to be late, he said. 3 voices that caught everyone's attention. 0. Turning around, several were surprised by the outfits of the 3 missing girls who approached the groups. Kane wore the green suit with black lines that she requested, along with green gloves and black boots with red shoes and metal plates. The mouth cover is around her neck like a necklace and the hood flutters as she walks, a final detail and an addition from her brother, a belt where she could carry various objects, such as tools, first aid objects, etc. Next was Momo, wearing a red outfit, consisting of a shirt and shorts with a black and white line pattern. The shirt has a gold zipper, as do the elbow and knee pads that she wears, made of black fabric with gold stones. She wears red boots with gold and fingerless gloves around her body and hooked around her neck. A dark crimson cape with white trim covers her body, but above all, her back, where she has an exposed part of skin. On her waist a bag where some achievements have been obtained and notebooks for the use of her who. Gwen, she wears an outfit similar to that of a magician, a long black shirt, with its sleeves reaching her palms and having golden bracelets with runes, and a row of golden clasps that close it, a blue and black jacket, having a hood and a belt with a golden clasp. This same jacket forms a mini skirt. Expensive and tight pants with stockings up to the thighs, and heels similar to boots, with golden clasps and the heel part of gold. Izuku blushed slightly and looked away, although he noticed Momo, and that's when the light went on. He already remembered her as that girl he saved from being kidnapped when that hero who showed him how the heroic world is corrupted by various plagues. Among the harvest. He never expected to see her again, though he did end up looking away from the three of them when Gwen gave him a kind, terrifyingly kind smile. Even though he didn't understand the hints and things the girls did, he did know when there was danger. Even though he wasn't really afraid as such, he didn't want to stop for the moments where his friend gets angry. They are both a nuisance and a pleasure to make her angry. Well, since everyone is here, we can now begin today's test, which consists of 2 versus 2 combat, then each one will be assigned a partner," said Almight with a bright smile. Izuku looked carefully at the list of participants, and which team the other would fight against, until he got to his name. Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yayorozu versus Tenya Ida and Katsumi Bikugu. Good thing I made anti-quirk discs and anti-quirk boomerang necklaces, Izuku said in his whisper, bringing his hand to the large bag he carries with him. Midoriya-san, right? Momo asked, approaching Izuku, who was ascending. That's right. Any displeasure with the suit design? He asks, although then he fake coughs because he realizes how hasty it was. First, sorry for the change of design. I thought that the original one would be somewhat uncomfortable for you, apart from, it would bring several problems with perverts and other boys, so I made a more comfortable design, said Izuku nervously, to which Momo laughed, bringing her hand elegantly to her mouth. 0. No problem, in fact, thanks for that. By the way, I heard what your note said. Do you have any ideas to improve my suit? Said Momo, smiling, before asking curiously. Izuku smiled brightly and proudly, before taking out a notebook from his bag. That's right. After making the outfits on Hayer's Day and being free after doing another job, I finished quickly and started redesigning outfits I saw in class. Here are the ideas for yours, said Izuku, handing the notebook to Momo, who watched with interest what the freckled boy did. Wow, I have to admit, it's amazing. Besides, I've never heard of the use of nanomachines, Momo said, surprised to see the notes next to the sketches. 0. Izuku embarrassedly scratched the back of his head and laughed nervously. Well, it's not that bad, said Izuku. Momo, who saw his state, laughed at how tender the black hair looked. If you say so, but I'll repeat it again and make it clear to you. I like your designs. Do you have time after the test? I'd like to see them better and talk to Power Loader Sensei to see if it's possible to realize your idea, said Mom with interest and a gem smile. In fact, yes, it is possible. He raised his arm. The UA sports suit deformed at the sleeve and it elongated or hardened and took the shape of a rope, surprising the girl. 0. I literally made this suit yesterday, and it's composed of purely nanomachine, Izuku said with a smile. Do you speak English? Momo asked curiously. That's right, I'm bilingual. I speak both Japanese and English perfectly, although I can speak other languages just as well, Izuku answers with a proud smile. What would be the other languages? Momo asked curiously. 0. It's one of my secrets, Izuku answers, bringing a finger to his lips, making the sign for silence while winking, entering a little into his villain role. Momo was surprised and blushed slightly. It's Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yayorozu's turn as villains, while Tenya Ida and Katsumi Bikugu will be the heroes. He said all this, drawing the attention of the two teenagers who turned to where he was. Shall we go? Izuku asked with a smile. 0. Yes, let's give it our best, said Momo stupefiedly. Both began to walk. Inevitably, they crossed paths with the rival team, where Izuku passed by Katsumi. Well, good luck, loser ape, Izuku said in a whisper that only she heard, causing her great rage. But she calmed down. Now she had the opportunity to break his face and bend him to her. Once that was done, she would force him to forgive her. Chapter 15: Intellect vs. Explosion. Point of view narrator. What are you doing? Albedo asked, appearing next to Izuku, who is in a forest. In the hands of its bearer, a machine looked like a rocket. He watched as he placed it on the ground, before a holographic panel appeared and he typed in a few commands at high speed. It's a probe that I will send outside the solar system, to its border that is surrounded by the Oort cloud. I know I can make materials with the transmuter, but even so, I would like to have more, and apart from that, I would be the first human to use the resources of that place, perhaps, and also set up a base on the moon or Mars," said Izuku with an animated smile, before moving away from the probe. It made a few beeps before 4 legs emerged from its sides, causing it to rise, and a high-pitched sound was heard beneath it, accompanied by a crimson glow. Then, at hypersonic speeds, the probe rose into the sky and disappeared. "Aren't you afraid of being noticed?" Albedo asked curiously. Izuku just shrugged. "Humanity stopped sending rockets into space centuries ago, and yes, I know there are satellites still in orbit, but none will pick it up because of its small size and its communications system superior to radio or satellite waves. Say it's a ghost in anyone's sight, and if it happens that they have it, it doesn't matter. After all, we're on the other side of the world now, and they won't come up with the idea that a Quirkless on the other side of the world did it," Izuku said simply, looking at the ground. I understand. Hey, since we're here, we could go see the Iguazu Falls. I saw that on the internet, and it caught my attention," Albedo said with a smile. "Sure, we can go now if that's what you want," Izuku said with a smile, before becoming Dark Master. I would like to," Albedo said before the two of them disappeared, being swallowed by Izuku's dark matter. "Elsewhere. Do you have any plans?" Momo asked Izuku, who was looking through something in his bag. "Not much. Mostly we need to make a barricade to prevent those two from coming in here. I'd say above all, we need to secure the bomb room," Izuku said calmly, taking out small discs between his fingers from his bag. "What are those?" Momo asked curiously. "Well, since we're the villains, why not play a little dirty? We have 5 minutes before all this starts. I'll go and place these babies around. I'll be back in literally a minute. In the meantime, start making the barricade," Izuku said before leaving the room. Momo muttered something illegible before beginning to use her quirk. Metal beams were propped up on the sides of the door frames, before being secured with drills against the wall. After that, Momo began to place piece by piece a sort of door, although she did not close it completely, allowing Izuku to enter at any time. She then went to the other doors, where the same ones were, but this time, with the idea of a mechanism that would allow everything to be closed with the slight pull of a cable. She sighed after making her creations and sat down on a chair that she created. 1, 2, 3, copy. Is anyone there?" Izuku asked from the communicator she has. Instantly the raven hair was startled to hear the black hair with green streaks suddenly, but calmed down before answering. "Hello, this is Momo. Did something happen?" Momo asked with curiosity and seriousness. "More or less. I won't make it on time, so close everything," Izuku said calmly. Wait, you have to go back quickly. The idea is that we stay together. Going individually is totally stupid," said Momo severely and seriously. "I know, and that's part of my plan," said Izuku before cutting the communication. "Damn! Why did he have to touch me with a conceited and proud of his quirk?" Momo exclaimed angrily and desperately. Meanwhile, "This will hurt, but I know I can beat her, show her that I am no longer Deku, but Izuku, and that I am superior to her," said Izuku calmly, leaning on a wall. On his right sleeve a small digital screen like a phone was formed thanks to nanotechnology, and showed him each vision of the discs he placed. He watched as Katsumi propelled herself with her explosions to move faster around the place. Izuku frowned when one of the cameras disappeared. But he just shook his head and laughed happily, before pressing a button and what was left of the camera exploded, destroying walls and floors and causing the entrance to be closed. Meanwhile, Katsumi stopped to see what happened. Izuku took advantage of this and pressed another button, causing the disc that was in front of her to shoot a burst of electricity that knocked her to the ground in pain. Getting up, she growled as if annoyed before running again, seeing a light in the darkness and firing an explosion like a beast for no reason. Izuku just watched this with a poker face as his other disc was completely destroyed, not out of any realization that it hurt her, but out of the mere fact that the girl was angry and wanted to smash something like a wild animal. He sighed before starting to walk. Without a doubt, that woman only made the hatred in him increase every time he saw her or heard something about her. He walked through the halls, In the distance he heard the explosions approaching him. He only saw the path the girl walked through her chambers, before making them explode, and he blew up others that closed the path for her, and guided her along a path he had already drawn when all this began. It didn't take long when, suddenly, he heard Katsumi's scream of fury, and the wall in front of him was destroyed, with her breathing heavily and her eyes almost shining with blood. Well, at least I predicted that you would destroy the wall to your left to advance, although, to be honest, that was not heroic or intelligent at all. Izuku said boredly. The nanomachines rearranged and relocated themselves around his weak points and gave more defense to all his joints, without taking away his movements. Damn Deku! I finally found you and I'll break your face before you forgive me! Katsumi shouted, filling against him. He launched an explosion, but a nanotechnology shield rose and protected its user, who returned the attack with a powerful punch to the girl's face, which made her step back. 2 metal batons were created in his hands, and he spun them at high speed in his fingers, before going against Katsumi. A blow with his left hand was enough to deflect the explosion that was going straight for her face, followed by another blow with the other hand on her jaw, which made her retreat 5 meters and hold the hit area and grunt in pain. Izuku looked at her coldly and began to walk, turning around her. She looked at him carefully and tried to analyze his movement, or some action that would tell her what he would do next. Low guard, few muscles, little strength, if his punches said anything, other than that he doesn't know how to hit. But she felt a chill when Izuku sounded predatory. In his eyes she swore she saw, "I know what you're thinking, Hitch," written in them. And by the time she realized it, she heard a crack followed by a sharp pain in one of her ribs. Izuku had hit her with one of our batons in the abdomen, before undoing one and holding her by the hair. Before kneeing her, another crack was heard, this time Katsumi's nose breaking. So then Izuku was about to hit her once more, but he saw a flash in the girl's hands, to which he jumped back and undid his baton before creating a shield held by both hands. The explosion generated by the ash hair made her retreat several meters backwards, where Izuku snorted, annoyed to see if his shield was destroyed, but he was relieved, since it absorbed the entire explosion, or at least 93%. His clothes/armor was somewhat torn, but it was reassembled in the blink of an eye. After that, Izuku prepared himself to see how Katsumi breathed heavily several meters away from him, with blood coming out of his nose and holding his lower left rib. Izuku is not worried about the latter. He makes sure to break it with the intention of weakening and slowing it down, and not to hurt any vital organ. The genre 2 new staffs and joined them into one, forming a longer staff, which expanded and lengthened more. Izuku charged at her, as did Katsumi, who launched an explosion forward. But Izuku was already close enough for his staff to reach Katsumi, helping him deflect her explosion to hit her in the wrist before hitting her with a baton again on her head, then in a quick movement hit her legs, throwing her to the ground, before aiming his staff, which generated a spear-like appearance, at Katsumi's face, which opened her eyes in surprise. "Give up," Izuku said in a cold and monotonous way. She just frowned, though Izuku was almost laughing at the explosion she put up. Enough of a distraction to blast him away and throw him away from her onto the floor. "Okay, my mistake, I won't do it again," Seijo Izuku in pain, his suit being repaired. He got up from the ground and saw Katsumi looking at him with hatred, while resting a finger on the trigger of one of his gloves. "Tell me, Deku, do you remember what my quirk is?" Katsumi asked with a psychopathic smile. "Which is a quirk not as good as your mother's, if you know what I mean," Izuku said with a mischievous smile, a smile he makes when he enters his role as Red Clock. "Piece of shit," Katsumi said before pulling the trigger. Izuku saw a flash of the girl's glove and just sighed. He never understood why women got angry at comments like or similar to the one he just made. But that didn't matter now, he had to act or he would die. His entire tech hand moved to his X-arm, where he created a reinforced shield. Boom! Elsewhere. "Alright, Myth-sensei, we have to stop the test," said Gwen seriously and desperately as she saw the cameras deactivate. Meanwhile, Kane fell to her knees on the ground, watching the black screens that were connected to the cameras in the area where Katsumi and Izuku were. Tears began to fall from her eyes. Young Gwen is right, I have to go immediately, and see that young Izuku is okay. He thought to himself, All Might about to move, but a metallic hand rested on his shoulder. Don't worry about everything, Izuku is fine, Power Loader said with a confident smile. Sensei, how can you say that? Said Mei, worried and upset, but Power Loader only messed up her hair. Calm down, Mei, I know you feel bad and scared, especially since you were the one who created that reckless girl's suit, but have faith in your partner. I have a heart that he is safe and sound, said Power Loader with a bright smile. Although everyone was now calm, that did not take away the anguish from the three girls. Back to the building. Shit, that's the last one, my eardrums, said Izuku coming out of a hole in the world, with his back protected by a layer of metal. On the other hand, his clothes are torn, as is his shield. He began to generate his pants, while he walks with some difficulty forward, deciding to make an exoskeleton that helps him walk better. He walked forward, passing through the smoke screen, until he crossed it, where he found a Katsumi who had a lost look and realized what he did. But when he saw him, he was surprised and went into shock to see him alive, lying on the floor and leaning against a wall. He just snorted, more because of the blush she had now to see him without a shirt. But his torso was covered by a jacket with the UA design, preventing his musculature or body from being seen or noticed, with an exoskeleton forming underneath. I have to admit it, Katsumi, that hurt, and damn it did hurt, Izuku said in a bad mood and clapping sarcastically. But whatever, and I give you credit, don't really expect your nut for a brain to have the idea to create that weapon, accumulate your sweat, and then ignite it and trigger a devastating explosion, ingenious but poorly executed and very negligent, said Izuku in a monotonous and serious manner. He felt like he wanted to kill himself, but he didn't want to vomit before praising him for that idea. A feeling that increased with confusion. What do you mean, bastard? She asked angrily. Izuku just snorted with a forced smile, preferring to laugh rather than cry from humiliation and feelings of madness than talking to an animal. Don't you understand? That foolish decision of yours to shoot that explosion would have killed me if I hadn't protected myself in time. Do you really think that would make a hero formed and educated by this society of hypocrites and blind? No, better said, do you really think that your quirk and your own person are to be a heroine of the standards of an ideal hero made for the eyes of civilians? It only causes harm where you are and where you go. How many has it caused a disorder or a childhood trauma to? How many has it abused in its entire life? Does it even consider you a person? Izuku said now in a calm and serene manner. Shut up, she said with blood dripping from her lips, before lunging at Izuku. Click. Katsumi heard that click. At the same time she felt something around her neck. Her eyes opened wide when she noticed the anti-quirk necklace on her neck. Then she received a punch in the stomach that made her vomit bile with blood. Izuku grabbed her other healthy arm and with a strong movement he dislocated it, causing her to scream in pain. He then grabbed her by the neck. You are nothing more than a piece of shit person, Katsumi Bakugo. Just look at what you did to me and remember all the shit you did to me in my bucking life. Turn the entire school against me, abuse my sister and manipulate her to be on your side and start bullying me. Don't play dumb, you saw my torso and arm, the burns and scars that you and all the bucking shit apes did to me. You took my right eye away. And now not just me, remember all those you hurt. Do you think that would make a heroine? Said Izuku with disgust and coldly, looking her straight in the eyes. Shut up, shit, she said, trying to hit him with her left arm. But she would be stopped with a headbutt from Izuku that made her step back and scream in pain, since he had hit her on her broken nose. I heard you before, sorry? Sorry about what? If it's because of my eye, rot, because I'm not going to forgive you, and not only that, I'm going to do an eye for an eye. And remember this, because he who warns does not betray. He lets out a sigh. But hey, even with what I told you, I see that you don't understand, or rather, my words go in one ear and come out the other. Listen and analyze what I'm telling you, and try to understand it. You are not a heroine, and you will never be a heroine. You'll just be an ape eating other people's shit and listening to the noises that come out of the apes that want to mate with you. Do you even think that I would be a real hero? Would I be? as society shaped it today, or the heroes of yesteryear who told the stories before the Quirk era? Did you even stop to think that no one in this world is a hero? Since when is being a hero a well-paid and privileged job? He snorts when he thinks things through better. But what am I saying? Even if you are smart enough to get good grades in this academy, you are retarded for what you really are, true intellect, and you don't think, you just act like the wild animal that you are. Izuku said, ending his speech before raising a fist and connecting a powerful punch to the girl's face, knocking her unconscious. Out of order, Izuku grabbed her by the neck tightly and slammed her against a wall. Her beaten body could be heard throughout the place. Izuku looked at her coldly and emotionlessly, feeling his heart beating 1,000 times an hour. A slight smile formed on his lips, but at the last second he brought his hand to his mouth and covered it. It was not the time for this. She sighed in relief and turned around, before starting to walk. It didn't take long for her to reach the starting point and find her bag, which she also hung on her left shoulder with the bag on her right waist. She made pockets in her jacket. While taking out a lollipop from her bag, she removed the wrapping and threw it on the ground, before putting the lollipop in her mouth, her hands in her pocket, and starting to walk. With the spectators. By the Celeste Sapiens, he's still alive, Gwen said in relief, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders and a force stop holding her heart. That's good, I really am a fool to doubt him. Kane said. She began to wipe away her tears, although it was impossible, when tears of relief and happiness came out and fell down her cheeks. Good, good. Surely he was saved thanks to nanotechnology. I sighed, relieved and wiping away some tears. Meanwhile, Power Loader sounds excitedly as he crosses his arms, with the other masters sighing in relief. But what happened to Bakugo? Kirishima asked curiously. At the mention of her, there were various reactions. Some of disapproval, others of disbelief due to the concern for her. There was even concern too. But what stood out the most among all was anger on Mei's part, hatred and disapproval. From Kane, along with hatred and disgust from Gwen, with her cousin at her side who saw everything seriously. He didn't get along with Izuku well enough to consider him a friend, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he doesn't care about his cousin's friend and that he was worried about him, and now he's relieved to see him alive. He really thought Katsumi had a screw loose for almost killing someone so blatantly. Besides, she was a total lunatic for doing that. He gulped, knowing what would happen if his cousin exploded emotionally. After all, he is aware that she is 90% anodite, a race that is considered the second strongest and that emotionally tends to be explosive, or their feelings are powerful. He just hopes that nothing goes wrong so that he has to use Alien X to stop his cousins and grandmother, or in general, his entire family from the anodite or alien side. Back to the building. Hit. Blocked hit. Momo was in charge of keeping Ida under control, who had broken through the barriers she had placed with a powerful kick, in this case, damaging his boot and partly his leg. Since Tenya did not expect the toughness and resistance of the Yayorosa's defenses. At this moment, the girl is in charge of preventing Ida from getting close to the bomb, while stopping him and blocking or hitting him with a metal staff that she had created. Surrender, villain. Today your days of glory and crimes will end, said Ida seriously. Momo, playing the villain role, snorted with a small smile and in a skillful movement, hit Ida in the benton, raised his head, then rammed him forward with the tip of the staff, pushing him about 2 meters to the ground backwards. Then she jumped and gave him a downward blow with her baton in the stomach, which made him complain of pain and lose the air in his lungs. But in a quick movement, and supporting his weight on his hands, Ida turned on the ground and connected a kick to the legs of the girl who was thrown to the ground, then jumped up and ran towards the bomb. Thanks to his quirk, he managed to leave Momo behind. Unfortunately, he didn't see how a hook hooked onto his left leg and pushed him back. Looking back, he saw how Izuku was wearing a hood/cape with the UA Sports design, anchored to the wall, a trigger linked to the hook that holds Ida's leg and that drags him until he slams him against the wall, destroying it and causing him to go through it. Momo's eyes widened at that. Izuku didn't flinch and just walked around the wall, meeting a sore Ida who tried to get up, but felt his body hurt. Izuku just approached him and stepped on his chest, causing him to fall back to the ground and complain about the pain. In his left hand, a stun gun forms and he points it at Tennik's head, wearing a cold and monotonous look. "Surrender, hero," said Izuku coldly. "Never, good will triumph over most of you villains as it always does," said Ida seriously and in pain. Izuku's visible eye sharpened, his hand trembled as Ida's words repeated in his mind. Ida gulped as a faint crimson light formed on the medical patch the boy had on. Feeling the atmosphere turn completely cold and a suffocating, lethal pressure enveloped him, it began to suffocate him. The ground beneath him cracked as Izuku increased his strength on the foot, holding Ida back. "That good will triumph as always over evil. Don't make me laugh, you bucking scum! Do you even know how many slaves are sold every minute that passes right now? How many women, girls, boys and men are murdered, robbed, mutilated, raped? They are even disarmed, and every part of them, even the deadest hair on their head, even the tip of their toenail, are separated from their body, killing them and then sold to the pressure that each one wants. Literally, your bucking bosses participate in that and put a price on human life," said Izuku in a cold and gloomy way. But when he looked closely, he noticed Ida's face of fear and shock. Fully realizing this, he sighed before covering his face. He laughed a little before smiling happily. Sorry, hee hee, I got carried away by the villain role, by the way, sorry about this," said Izuku before kicking Ida's head, removing his helmet and shooting an electric shock at his head, leaving him unconscious. After that, she sighed and brought a hand to her face again, breathing deeply to calm herself. Once she had calmed down, she undid all her weapons and took Ida in her arms, carrying him in princess mode. "The villains win," Izuku excitedly said with satisfaction that he didn't understand hearing All Might's words through the megaphone, though he just shrugged and walked towards Momo, who was approaching him. "Is everything okay?" she asked worriedly, the solo-sounding quality to her. "Yes, everything is okay. It is better that we go back and leave Ida in the infirmary," Izuku said, turning around, and we started walking. "What about Katsumi?" Momo asked restlessly. "Katsumi?" Izuku asked, stopping and sounding confused. "Bakugo, Ida-san's teammate," said Momo, but she saw the total confusion in the boy. "The ashen-haired girl," said Momo with a vein in her head. "Oh, I thought she came alone. Some robots took her away on the way here. Besides, I don't know her by those names, I know her as an ape," Izuku said, although he whispered the last part, before starting to walk and leaving Momo behind, who sighed in relief. Chapter 16, New Update. Point of View Narrator. Damn, Izuku thought with difficulty when he was hugged by Gwen, Kane and Mei. "Damn you, crazy man, don't do that again," said Gwen sternly and angrily. "Onii-chan, please don't do that again," Kane said in anguish. "Fool, I thought I would lose my first friend," Mei said sadly but relieved, without realizing what she said. Yeah, I'm alive and kicking, I'm not going to die either," said Izuku calmly and patting the girls on the head. "That reminds me that I have to include a security and life-saving system in the Ultimatrix. Apart from that, this way I avoid problems with Terror. That bastard almost gained control over me when he scared Tamura," Izuku thought to himself. "Well, since everyone was okay and the two students Ida and Bakugo are in the infirmary, we should continue with the exam," said All Might, getting everyone's attention. "What you did was very risky," Momo said, approaching him, her face only emitting pure seriousness. "Did you hear the explosion?" Izuku asked, shaking his head. "Did I hear her? I doubt anyone around hadn't heard her," said Momo seriously and in an excited manner, only hearing a laugh from Izuku. "You take it very seriously that I joined you after something, it's strange," Izuku said with a somewhat embarrassed and uncomfortable smile, his previous laugh being one of nervousness. "Yo, okay, maybe your quirk is powerful or strong, but I was not part of the idiots who celebrated your every stupidity and that increased your ego. What you did was reckless and risky. Not only you could have gotten hurt, but also other people. Imagine if everything had been real, hundreds of people died, and you want to be a hero like that," Momo said, annoyed by Izuku's carefree attitude, ignoring the pain and nervousness in him. He just sighed and shook his head after calming down. "I'm sorry, Yayorozu-san, but I'm not a spoiled quirk, after all." She reaches for her bag and takes out her Jiminhyo, ID or the identifier/document of her countries, showing a sign to the brunette who opened her eyes wide to read it. I am Quirkless, and for your information, I am just as capable of defeating someone with whom, and for that, I only need my intellect. Just look at what I did. I survived an explosion that if it weren't for the reinforced structure of this building I would have thrown it down. But I survived and won easily. Not only that, we gave each other the victory with extreme ease. Apart from that, being a hero? Heh, thanks for the compliment, but as much as you we already know that without a quirk you can't be a hero, Izuku said calmly and with a small smile. I didn't know, I'm sore dash, Momo said sadly, but with a finger on her lips, silence. Red Clock's role is taken by Izuku, a more daring and brave personality. As cunning and foxy, she also showed herself, accompanied by her lack of normality. This is shown by Izuku's calm face and uncomforting smile, but which still transmits comfort and peace. There's no drama, Yaoyorozu-san. I don't care about not having a quirk either. After all, power is nothing without the most important thing, intellect, Izuku said with a kind and bright smile, causing great confusion in the Raven. Some time later. What the hell happened here? Izuku asked, entering his laboratory. Everything was a mess, machines everywhere. A total mess of cables, and a bucking star is being enveloped by a glass sphere, with both ends a piece of metal that constantly extracts energy. A sub-energy? No, wait, that thing is more powerful, Izuku said, surprised to see a holographic data panel, chewing and showing that the energy in that capsule is 100 times more than that of the sun. You finally arrived, said a voice above him. Lifting his head, he saw a monkey with 4 arms, a tail and fangs sticking out of his lips. His fur is black, with his skin gray. Each of his fingers is shown to be an exoskeleton, like that of a spider, and his torso is the same. The Ultimatrix is in the form of a bracelet on his upper right arm. Izuku, too, turned into a spider monkey, arachnochimpanzee, swung down to the height of his other self. There's a social life to be had, was the response of Izuku, one who shrugged. You're right, said the spider monkey before swinging and returning to where he was, on top of a machine. Izuku one looked around, loose and hanging cables, various machines, more than 20 at least, working at full power, while 5 gravitational rings rotate around the capsule that maintains the energy. And what's the plan? Asked Izuku one before throwing himself onto a beanbag in a place far from everything. You are me after all, you should think the same as me, said Spider Monkey simply, while connecting and adjusting some pieces and cables. Unlike you, I did sleep and did not drink the drink that allows us to stay awake for months without rest. He lets out a sigh. A tired mind is not the same as a mind energized by inorganic and organic compounds, Izuku once said simply. His other alien self just shrugged. You're right, was the only answer, before bringing a piece with its web from the tail. So? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. This is the first step to create our own omni-energy. Unfortunately, we are too far away for that. It crossed my mind to use celestesipian DNA as an energy source, but it is dangerous for us to use celestesipian DNA in the Ultimatrix. Even 1% gives access to Warlike and Serena to lock us in the mental dimension of Alien X. Even if we succeed, they will possibly give us a celestial judgment, said Spider Monkey, connecting a cable, where a holographic panel appeared in front of him, where he began to type. Reminds me of those books we found the other day in that abandoned city in the north. What was the name of the franchise? I think it was Warhammer 40,000. Izuku once said thoughtfully, looking up at the ceiling. Whatever, come here, I need your help with Albedo, said Izuku 2, taking Izuku 1 with his web. He pulled him towards him, as Izuku 1 turned into Albedo on the path. Let me go, you idiot, if you want my help so much, let me, Albedo said, removing herself from the grip of her other self, who snorted in annoyance. He will enter the machinery with the holographic panel accompanying him. Meanwhile, Spider Monkey jumps down and was enveloped by a red wave of power, with the Ultimatrix function activating. His body mutated and grew, his lower arms split into 2 and extended, forming spider legs at his sides. His arms grew larger and longer, as well as spines growing from hardened fur on his forearms, and bone spikes on his shoulders. He landed on the ground with his spider legs, now evolved into the ultimate spider monkey, a black-colored gorilla with lighter gray skin than his unevolved counterpart, exoskeleton fingers like his rounded torso, for long spider legs. His arms are long, unlike his feet which were shortened. He has spikes on his boned shoulders. Next to his face, two spider-like mandibles that shine like metal. His face is split into sections, his face in half, and his lower jaw is split into 4 sections. The Ultimatrix is located on his stomach, next to 4 sharp lines. The dial has 4 small spikes, one on top and bottom, 2 others on the left and right. He moved through the mess that is his laboratory with his extra spider legs. He then approached a large cylindrical machine and took it between his 2 arms, before moving it somewhere else. Emergency, emergency, detection and presence launcher running at 30%. Albedo.exe's voice announced throughout the place. Supreme Spider Monkey made annoyed gorilla sounds before moving quickly, leaving the machine he was charging on another one and joining them apart from connecting them. To then turn around and go to a device on the wall, the device that he activated when he first entered that laboratory. He looked at it seriously, seeing how some components after so many weeks, even months, were already beginning to malfunction. He just snorted. He had already predicted this, so he pointed to one end of the room with his right arm. From his palm a spider web was shot that caught a larger tank than the one connected to the wall and attracted it towards him, then began to replace it. Meanwhile, his other self, now Galvan, is programming the machine above the energy capsule, being a pillar, since beneath the energy capsule and the rings that surround it rubbing, there is another part of the machine that he is now working on. Once we finished that, he got out of the machine and the hill, watching as his other self tried to move an even heavier machine, but couldn't do it, until he was enveloped in a red light. When he is missing, he showed a supreme spider monkey, but different. The spines on his shoulders are now fur and he has more spines on his back. Not only that, he is slightly larger. Apart from that, he lost his spider legs and now has 3 pairs of arms, 2 more pairs of arms. Apart from that, he now does not have a division in the middle of his face, and only has one in his lower jaw. The Ultimatrix is still located in the stomach, but with the difference that Shorts has 4 larger and sharper spikes in each corner of the dial. And that radical change in the form of the transformation? Albedo asked, raising an eyebrow. A theory that I formulated while I was gone. Let's say that I discovered that there are sub-races and species between the supreme evolutions. In this case, for now I only discovered 2, one in the first one that I just used a few moments ago, the Textorpithecus, a form of supreme spider monkey specialized in the capabilities of its web. Agile and overselling its weaving capabilities, its most resistant web, as well as the ability to create and produce it, from its hands, spider-like leg tips, and an enlargement in its face firing organ against 2 with various divisions and parts that allow it to manipulate its web, like sharper fingers like knitting needles. It is already obvious what it does. While there is Pithecus, a race more specialized in face-to-face combat, although its web is not as resistant and malleable as its counterpart, it is produced in larger quantities, which reduces its amount of fire, but as compensation, increases its strength, carrying 670 times its weight. Unlike the Textorpithecus form, which carries a total of 320 times its weight. Both share a spider sense, so to speak, but that of the Pithecus is several times superior. I would even dare say that it is like a premonition ability. Explains Supreme Spider Monkey, carrying the machine between his machinery tables, taking it to a base-shaped machine, where I placed the one that carries, which is shaped like a cylinder, before starting to work with it. Wow, I have to admit, that's impressive. Is there anything else to say? Albedo asked in amazement and curiosity. Ultimate Spider Mono just shrugged. I don't really know. I didn't see much about the genetics and possible subraces they could have and the differences in their capabilities. I just had our weekly Estefania attack and started building all this. Answers Supreme Spider Monkey while finishing programming the machine he works with. Albedo, Izuku 1, filmed August, was undoubtedly proud of her intellect. In less than 3 days she had already built all this. But leaving that aside, she jumped, while a wave of power is emitted from her Ultimatrix, activating her super evolution function. Her body grew and mutated, while several metal pieces are released from the Ultimatrix and others surround her body and head. When everything ends, I reveal Supreme Albedo, The Ultimatrix is in his head, whose brain is much larger and developed, to the point that its shape can be seen through the skin. A third eye was formed on his forehead, and another 3 around the body, 2 on the sides with 2 cannons each, and another 6 behind the head/back. He lost arms and legs, but now he has a kind of floating suit, which allows him to levitate. He gained 4 robotic arms controlled by telepathy. 4 pieces surround his head and form a stimulating and protective dome around his head and connect with his third bright eye on his forehead. I float in the air, while beginning to see everything with a smile. You know, you could have done better in several aspects, said Supreme Albedo with a sly smile. Albedo.exe appeared at his side, rubbing him with a bright smile. You're right, she said happily. And which side are you on? The spider monkey asked, irritated, only receiving a shrug in response, to which it would snort, before glowing red and turning into malware. It merged with the machine it was on before beginning to spread out and encompass the entire place, then placing all the machinery in the center of the lab and updating and changing the shape of the machines it was using. He defused from them and stood to the side of Supreme Albedo. Now everything was arranged, in the center of everything, 2 pillars one on top of the other, between them, the energy capsule containing the large amount of energy, surrounded by rings that rotate around it, defying gravity itself, another 5 machines. They hunched over and aimed at the enhanced sub-energy, firing a laser line at the rings surrounding it. 3 more constantly spinning machines shoot from a safe angle at the energy capsule, avoiding being stopped by the rings. Malware watched in amazement as several holographic panels appeared, but noticed something, and they were composed of psychic energy. He turned to see Supreme Albedo, who began to control each machine and adjust their calibrations. Everything shifts and works like the gears of the best mechanical watch. Last step, compress everything into just one point. For that, manipulate all the machinery along with the alchemical nanotechnology and atom recalibrator. Meanwhile, I needed to exert a pressure 100 times greater than that of the Earth at the central point of everything, which is only 5 millimeters in diameter, said Supreme Albedo excitedly. I feel like this is going to be tiring, Malware said in annoyance. He started walking forward. A light enveloped him, before his entire body changed and mutated exponentially, turning into a gray-colored rocky colossus. In his stomach a purple core, surrounded by several cracks. The Ultimatrix is located on his waist, on a belt, which hooks a pair of shorts with red and white pieces on the edges. Begins. Supreme Albedo orders. All his psychic power enveloped all the machinery in the place and swirled in place. Meanwhile, Izuku too became Gravitac, Galilean, and activated his gravity powers, causing a purple circular aura with a red ring to surround his hands. He saw how the energy was altered, but its power increased, trying to stabilize it. He saw how all the machinery began to break up and separate into plates, spinning around the sub-energy. The rings that surrounded it began to shake and compress, until they completely enveloped it, and the capsule that retains the energy began to shrink. He smiled with pleasure as he watched everything spin and come together into a sphere that began to shrink. He could even see these white electricity emerging from the metal construction. By the way, I forgot to say that everything will explode and we will destroy solar systems if this doesn't go well, Supreme Albedo said suddenly, causing a laugh from Albedo.exe and an angry growl from Gravitac. The electricity stopped emerging from the metal structure, which was becoming more and more compressed. Everything ended when the sphere was only 5 centimeters in diameter, at which point Gravitac applied his power to it and compressed it further, along with Albedo's psychic power, which, due to the amount of mental energy and the pressure generated by all this, began to cause blood to come out of his eye from the evolved Galvanian medium. A flash was generated as both covered their eyes with their arms. Once everything calmed down and Albedo.exe announced that everyone was okay, they opened their eyes. Before them, a small light less than a centimeter, as indicated by Supreme Albedo before, the size of 5 millimeters in diameter. Both returned to their human form before becoming Edom. Well, it's time to be one again, said one of them before walking to his opponent. That's right, goodbye headaches from having a social life outside, said the other ditto smiling. For now, was the first ditto's response before shaking hands with his equal. After both of them merged into one, he returned to his human form and began walking towards the point of light in the air. But at that moment Albedo appeared in front of him and headed towards him. "Remember the update for the Ultimatrix?" said Albedo seriously. True, it includes better level 10 nanotechnology, with a better energy converter and processor, plus the update of the current systems," said Izuku, turning 180 degrees and heading to the farthest table. Luckily, one of his former selves had already created a chip with all of this, so he just had to approach the table and start installing everything into the Ultimatrix that took the form of a glove. Meanwhile, controlling arms made of nanomachines, Albedo enveloped the point of light, energy and power and turned it into a small disc no more than 2 centimeters in diameter and brought it closer to Izuku, who had already finished with all the system updates of the Ultimatrix, which turned its dial and made some beeps. "Okay, now what do we call this energy?" Izuku asked doubtfully, to which Albedo facepalmed. "Really?" she asked exasperatedly. "What? Scientists aren't good at naming things. Let me think." He takes his mentor's hand and closes his eyes. "Sub-Neo energy. What do you think?" Izuku asked, opening his eyes and seeing an Albedo who shrugged. "Something is something," Albedo said before moving her hand forward. The disc floated in the air and was taken by Izuku in his hand. The core of the Ultimatrix was deployed and an access was created on the side of it, where Izuku inserted the disc and the access was sealed. Izuku saw his Ultimatrix, although for the next 30 seconds nothing happened. I was expecting something," said Izuku, trying his own luck. At that moment he felt an electric current run through his entire body, before falling unconscious to the ground. Albedo just crouched down and with a stick made of nanotechnology touched its bearer. Seeing that he let out a groan of pain, meaning that he was still alive, she sighed in relief. He made an analysis of his entire body and saw how nanomachines traveled throughout his system and began to plant themselves in his body. Albedo, after seeing that and that the technological hand on its carrier stabilized him, created 2 mechanical claws that took Izuku and laid him down on the couch. After that, Albedo stood next to him. "He asked me if I can generate a physical body yet," Albedo said, raising her right hand. A flash of light appeared, being slight, but still strong, striking Albedo when her forearm was divided by a line of glitch. She moved her hand and was able to take a metal rod that was on the ground. You are definitely amazing, Izuku. You are possibly the best carrier I could have," dojo Albedo happily before patting an unconscious Izuku on the head. Some time later. "Oh, holy heavens, this is the softest thing I've ever slept on," Izuku said sleepily, as he settled down on the pillow he was sleeping on. "You are a pervert," Albedo said softly. Izuku opened his eyes to listen to her and look up. Her voice sounded completely different, so different, but at the same time the same as every time he hears it. Only this time it was more organic. "What the hell happened and what happened to your voice?" said Izuku, turning around and looking up, seeing Albedo's smiling face. "Not much. The new update worked perfectly. We managed to create an unlimited energy source, although of course its base will wear out, so we will have to change it from time to time," Albedo answers calmly, while running her left hand through Izuku's hair. He blinked in confusion, but excited with satisfaction. "I see my physical body projector worked," Izuku said with a proud smile. "Yes, I give you all the credit for your achievement. Once again, you managed to plan everything by yourself," Albedo said with pride in her voice, stroking Izuku's hair, who relaxed at the soft and delicate touch of the AI. Or she was now a girl or an android, he doesn't really know. He doesn't even know what type of body he created, maybe an alien girl? He doubts she created a human body. She hates humans, of course, he is an exception to the exception. "Thanks, but let's leave the novel prize and the lakes for later. What happened?" "The last thing I remember is placing the new energy in the Ultimatrix, and that it seems to have settled in," Izuku said, settling himself on the pillow. Where he was, he noticed how Albedo murmured silently before smiling. "You fell unconscious. I managed to control the energy released by the Ultimatrix, but it was so much that a little bit leaked out and reached your body, that left you unconscious. But the nanomachines in your body absorbed it, and began a process of genetic adaptation. You don't have to worry, nothing bad will happen to you again. Albedo responds calmly. Okay, thanks for reporting. Figure this will have some influence on my transformations and my body. Izuku said, Albedo walking at his words. That's right, they will be enhanced by the energy of the Sinneo energy, increasing their capabilities. Apart, the technology hand also does that, and it is more helpful than this energy enhances your forms, since it is enhanced by the new energy and improves everything in the technology it comes into contact with, enhancing it. Although it is extremely unstable, this also applies to your body. All your biological, physical, even and most importantly, mental and cognitive capabilities will increase. Your nervous system was enhanced by the machine hand and adapted to the flow of this energy. The capabilities of your neurons were amplified and every part of your brain improved. You could say that you are now a superhuman, but keep this in mind, super, not supreme, you are far from that. Albedo explained, hearing a laugh from Izuku. Well, that's good, now that you mention it and I pay attention to it, I feel lighter and stronger. Izuku said calmly. I'm glad you like it, but it's better that you rest for now. You're recovering from an electric shock that almost killed you. You were literally on the verge of death. Albedo said, stroking the head of the black-haired boy with green highlights. Well, nothing new, was the simplistic response of Izuku, whose side relaxed. Out of curiosity, he raised his hand and saw the design of his Ultimatrix, which had been recalibrated. I don't know bad, although it is somewhat annoying. Luckily the tubes are bucking flexible. Izuku said calmly, resting his head better on the pillow where it is and lowering his right arm. Comfortable? Albedo asked with an amused look. Yes, by the way, what am I lying on? Izuku asked curiously. Obviously on my thighs, silly. Albedo mocked amused. Izuku blinked a few times, before blushing and standing up abruptly. Sorry, I didn't mean to, Izuku said hurriedly, but he felt his whole body hurt, before he began to fall. Albedo caught him in time. With a worried look, she laid him back down on her thighs. I told you to rest, silly, besides I put you on my thighs. Albedo said with a slight blush, but still annoyed by Izuku's sudden action. Sorry, it's just that I didn't expect this, said Izuku sighing. No drama, for now, sleep, tomorrow you should be as good as new, said Albedo, stroking the head of the boy who ascended. Fine, but I'm not doing it because you told me to, but because I want to, said Izuku before embarrassedly settling himself on the girl's thighs. Whatever you say, my dear bearer, said Albedo with closed eyes and an amused smile, while caressing the head of an Izuku who was slowly falling asleep. Chapter 17, First Confrontation between Ruby and Emerald. Narrator POV. Shouldn't you be with your family? Izuku asked amused. And shouldn't you be dealing with the destructive hitch? Flint asked sarcastically. That hitch is crazy to destroy me, besides, Kurojime sent you, Izuku said calmly, while jumping from where he is and standing next to Sandman. The man just sighed in annoyance. Do you have any plans? Sandman asked curiously. Izuku just shrugged. They are all brutes. If they had given me a week of preparation, this would have been the assault of the century. But since they warned me about 15 minutes late, and now I am here, said Izuku, while turning the dial of his Ultimatrix. It's not my fault, it's the Shadow's fault. Besides, what are you doing with that thing? Asked Flint, raising an eyebrow. I only see a few things, don't mind me, Izuku answers. At that moment the dial of the Ultimatrix turned and showed a hologram of a new transformation. HMP, is that normal for your watch? Flint asked curiously. Relax, it's just a bad hologram configuration and calibration, Izuku answers, turning his dial. Instantly, the hologram was repaired and was no longer damaged, even showing measurement lines, and the quality was better. Now that I think about it, that transformation never made the news, Flint said, somewhat curiously. Several of my best transformations didn't come to light. Besides, this one is just to make fun of you a little. Izuku responds in a funny way, making the Sandman uncomfortable and a little angry. But anyway, let's start with this. My witch mother told me that today I had to make dinner, Izuku said before being enveloped by a red light. Instead, a small humanoid robot the size of a chip appeared. Turned into a nanomech, Izuku flew over and landed on Flint's shoulder, who raised an eyebrow in annoyance. "What are you doing?" I asked with bewilderment. "Is ended obvious? You'll enter first, change that long face and take the form of any famous person. Supposedly you could do that with your quirk," Izuku said. Flint just sighed. He watched as the sand swirled around his face and acted as a mask, taking on the appearance of someone sculpted by the gods. "I thought you could turn your body into sand," Izuku said disappointedly. "I can only do it partially. Now let's leave the talk for later and finish this," said Flint before turning around, to go to the emergency stairs to get off the addition. Izuku just shrugged and hid it in his shoulder vest. Some time later. "What do we do?" asked Flint in a low voice. "Do you think I know? The times I robbed a bank, it was always with plans. Even my robbery 2 years ago entered the top 10 worldwide," Izuku said simply. "Wait, you're the one who robbed the country's central bank, Nippon Ginko?" Flint asked incredulously. "That doesn't matter now. This bank only has millionaires, so it doesn't matter. You just have to break the security," he said before jumping off the man's vest and glowing red. Nanomech was replaced by Wrath, who landed on the ground and roared, drawing the attention of everyone present and completely scaring them. Although his appearance was now different from his 10-year-old self, his striped fur on his shoulders and arms hardened and became and opted for a pointed shape, elongating and forming plates almost like thorns. His claws sharpened and grew longer. His pants remained the same, with the red fabric on his thighs becoming metal, with a battle skirt with neon red edges and metallic pieces. He took a seat that was as dry as he could get and threw it, scaring the people even more, who started to flee. Instantly the security began to arrive, which mostly went against Izuku, who just moved and dodged each of their attacks, all of them being physical attackers. It was something that was easy for Izuku to counter. He just retracted his claws and just a hit on their weak points was enough to knock them out. He grabbed 2 that came from the head and slammed them into each other, leaving them unconscious. He jumped towards him and did a deadly maneuver, to grab a guard with his legs, and with a skillful movement and applying force, he threw him forward, causing him to crash into 3 and the 4 to be thrown to the ground. After that he propelled himself with his arms and fell to his feet. He saw how more guards arrived with multiple quirks. One of them has 4 arms, another seemed to have elemental quirks, one of rock, another of ice and the last of white, with their limbs turned into said materials, while they also wrapped their bodies in them. Next to them, a man who was wrapped in gears, firearms and mechanical fists. The last protruding guard was the one who had tentacles on his back, 5 in total, with arms ending in sharp claws like scythes. Izuku just smiled foxily before being engulfed by a red wave of power, signifying that the Ultimatrix's super evolution function had been activated and causing mutations in the alien tiger. Spikes emerged from various parts of his body, seeing his back, neck and elbows. His muscles and fur increased as well as his height. He still maintained an athletic and agile body. His pants remained, now having metal rings on his thighs, metal pieces that wrap around his legs and neon stripe-shaped lines on his calves. Next to him a metal belt with neon red spikes, metal bracelets on his forearms, red lines and stripes on his arms and shoulders. He wears a red vest with a tiger face design, a red mask made of red fur. His claw was now made of metal and he had not only 1, but 3 on each hand. On his back a dense layer of black fur had formed, and on his lower back a tail that ends in a metallic claw. Now the claws on his feet and fingers evolved and became larger and sharper, like his old folding claws, identical to the spikes on his elbows. The activated Ultimatrix is located on his chest. Izuku cracked his knuckles before unfurling his 3 metallic claws, a predatory grin adorning his face. "You think you can beat me, fools," said Ultimate Wrath with arrogance and a wild smile. The first guard attacked, this one being the ice element. Unfortunately, at a speed that surprised him and surpassed him, Izuku dismantled his armor and most of his ice arms, now showing the real ones. He then received a kick in the face that sent him several meters back unconscious with his face destroyed, as well as his clan, jaw and several loose teeth. Izuku grabbed one of the last guard's tentacles just in time, before cutting it with his creases, causing him to scream in pain. But before he could remove it, he grabbed it with the claws of his fingers and pulled it towards him, before grabbing his other tentacles and turning on his axis, hitting the other guards and separating him from them. Before hitting him in the stomach, putting him on the ground and tearing off all his tentacles by levering his foot on the subject's back and pulling the tentacles with his arms. The guard screamed in pain, but fell unconscious shortly after. Izuku felt a gurgle, along with a loud sound behind him. Turning around, he saw how the subject of mechanical quirk diaproban him, without making a scratch on the hardened skin of the alien tiger, who began to walk towards him. Desperate, he launched himself to hit with his mechanical fists, but they were held by the hands of the apoplexian, who crushed them with absurd ease, before pulling him with a jerk and throwing him against the plant subject, who launched a whip with one of his targets, a whip that his partner received, who howled in pain. So then Izuku would jump towards the plant quirk bearer, whom he would begin to cut and destroy each plant on his body, before destroying a metal chair and nailing what was left of it, being a metal bar, into his shoulder, and then bending it, thus preventing it from moving. He heard footsteps, but he didn't flinch, and just let himself be hit by the stone quirk subject. He didn't flinch, then stabbed his torso in a non-vital spot, then kneed him in the jaw, raising him up and holding his arms, then spoke down and kneed him in the jaw again, hearing a powerful crack as his jaw shattered and left him unconscious. With a movement of his tail, he cut off one of the four-armed guard's hands, dismembering him to hear his cry of pain and turning around, before holding his face. He tried to defend the guard, but Izuku grabbed his arms one by one and was destroying them with each application of slight force he made. After that, he grabbed his head with his greatest strength, a slight cracking crack was heard, and then he threw him upwards, and as he fell, he hit him in the stomach, throwing him against the wall and knocking him out. After all that, he walked towards the mechanical quirk guard, who was preparing several firearms, which he fired at full power. But Supreme Wrath didn't even flinch and just walked towards him. Helpless, he tried to flee, but he was grabbed by the leg and lifted up, before being slammed against the ground not just once, not twice, not even 3 or 4, but multiple times, before being thrown towards the ceiling, where he hit and was knocked out due to his unconsciousness. After that he turned around, seeing that more guards arrived, but they stayed still to see their mutilated companions. Seeing this, Izuku smiled and roared, causing all the guards to fear him and run away from him. "What the hell did you do?" asked Flint, arriving, watching in disbelief what Izuku did to the guards, while he knocked out 5 unconscious guards. "I just taught those fools a lesson," the Supreme Apoplexian answers, before being enveloped by a red light and becoming human again, wearing his new trench coat armor that has connector ears on the hood. "They'll be fine anyway," he said before taking a cylindrical device from his suit and throwing it into the center of the room. "What is that?" Flint asked, stepping back, seemingly distrustful. "A regeneration stimulant. All your wounds will disappear. Now let's go, I have things to do," Izuku said before starting to walk. Flint sighed before leaving the unconscious guards he carried in a safe place, away from Izuku's gas. He didn't trust the brat at all. After that he followed him. It didn't take long for them to reach the bank vault, where Izuku approached the large door before glowing red. Once the light disappeared the second, it showed a humanoid being made of blue and black metal, with hands instead of fingers, 3 toes, 2 in front and 1 in the back forming a kind of talon. 2 pieces of acyl metal climb up its hair, back and shoulder and rise above its head, which is made of silver metal and is not attached to the body, rubbing by magnetism and being held by the 2 pieces of blue metal. The Ultimatrix was located on its meter. Turned into a Lordstard, he placed one of his hands on the vault before beginning to hear the various mechanical mechanisms move, along with the large handle that it has turning in the opposite direction. Instantly it opened, revealing a large amount of money. Izuku looked at him. He didn't really care about that at this stage of his life. He no longer had to buy the components on the black market or in the lower town to improve his Ultimatrix. But remembering one fact, and that is that they work for all for one, he turned to look at Flint. "Do you know that you won't keep even half a tenth of this?" Izuku asked seriously, to which Flint sighed. "I know, but that will be enough to feed my wife and daughter, buy them things, but above all, buy their medicine," said Flint with anguish. "What is he suffering from?" Izuku asked curiously. The Red Death, Flint answers in anguish, before starting to walk and starting to take what money he could. Izuku just watched him, and after hearing what the man said, he couldn't help but feel bad for the man, even remembering that his mother suffers from the same disease. Now that I realize that so many things happened and I did other projects that I ended up forgetting to do the cure. Izuku said before sighing, if the transformation he has could do that, before walking forward and being enveloped by a red light. His place was taken by Dark Master, who enveloped all the money with his dark matter, before making her disappear, leaving a frustrated Flint. Relax, Sand Knight, here's your share, he said before a small blue cube emitted energy from his body. What is this? Flint asked suspiciously. Your share of the money, just don't make a fool of yourself and start spending it, or else you'll draw the eyes and ears of the authorities, you just have to hydrate it. Izuku said before handing him the bucket. How do I know you're not lying? Said Flint suspiciously, looking at the cube in his hand. And how do I know that no is mentioning your daughter dying to cause pity? Izuku asked sarcastically, turning around and leaving the vault, being followed by a grumpy Flint. Hear that? Flint asked upon hearing a familiar noise. Yes, it's fire, Izuku replied before enveloping himself and Flint in his matter, then petrifying it like obsidian. A powerful flare engulfed Izuku's sphere of solid dark matter, which even wrapped Flint around his body to protect him from the heat. Scene change. When Flint opened his eyes, he found himself in a completely dark place. He was literally rubbing in the void. Looking around, he would notice stars in the distance, but he heard a whisper. Turning around, he saw several bipedal creatures or walking on 4 legs, or the basics of his body. They were the 2 arms, some using them as legs and their legs ending in sharp spikes. He could see them clearly. Their outline and colors were the same as his partner's transformation. But what scared me were their amorphous shapes, as well as the crystals on their faces or what would be their heads, shining in different colors, each one. Sorry I'm late, he heard a voice and turned around, intending to hit the person who held him by the shoulder. But it just passed through his body as if he were a ghost. Scared, he was about to try to flee, but he couldn't even move from where he was. Relax, it's me. He spoke again. I'm going. Flint looked more closely at the person who was talking to him, noticing that it was one of those creatures, but with some differences. Its shape was more human. The gem on its head is that of an hourglass, and the characteristic symbol of his partner in crime is on its chest. I'll take you home, said Izuku, taking Flint in his arms. Flint tried to struggle, but it was impossible. Where the hell did you bring me, bastard? Said Flint, although his voice did not come out of his lips, although that did not prevent Izuku from not knowing what he said. I just brought you along the path I remembered to go from one place to another, although I usually do this quickly when I bring others and they don't notice. But I put you here by mistake to protect you, but whatever. He answers before hugging Flint and sinking him into his body, being completely absorbed. Izuku sighed as he listened to one of them speak, then turned around and saw him. He was the largest of all, reaching 1,650,000 kilometers in height. It was a mistake. We were attacked and I protected him with my body. Unfortunately, I brought him by mistake and he will not come back. Izuku answers, to which the colossal figure only nodded. After that, Izuku compressed himself into his own point, where a singularity was created and he disappeared from that dimension. Change of scene. Damn, where did that bastard go? Endeavor said seriously. Here I am. Answers a voice to his left, before being hit by a sand mallet. When Endeavor recovered and looked ahead, he saw a red clock turned into a being of sand, with a box where the sand comes out and where his Ultimatrix is. Sand? Haha, you're an idiot. I just have to turn you into crystal. Endeavor said with a smile, her flames rising, before starting to walk towards Izuku. He slid across the floor towards Endeavor. They both looked into each other's eyes, but Endeavor noticed a trickle of sand coming out of the front door, which made him alert. What are you planning? Endeavor asked seriously. Crushing. Answers Izuku, giving a smile of eyes. Endeavor opened his eyes wide upon hearing great destruction on the upper floors, to which he began to propel himself with his flames, avoiding being crushed by a colossal fist of sand. Izuku was only absorbed by it, before the fist of sand rose, leaving the bank. Endeavor, furious, looked through the hole formed by the area, opening his eyes in surprise to see a colossal being of 40 meters composed of sand, barely noticing the Ultimatrix on his chest, while multiple eyes formed throughout his body. Sandbox roared, terrifying everyone who saw or heard him. Meanwhile, I see it now, Ben said in the sky, standing on a hoverboard. So go, you have full permission. I heard the voice of the hero hawk on the other side, to which I smiled and jumped off my board, before pressing the dial of the Omnitrix, and being enveloped by a green light. Before Izuku could do anything, a 50-meter-tall, white and red giant landed on top of him, knocking him to the ground and breaking his body apart. Wait a minute, it'll last longer, Ben said, growing very large and looking out onto the street. All the sand was scattered. But with his lower eyes, he saw a red light move behind him, passing between his legs. Hag, come on, old man, how hard is it for you to fall unconscious? Ben wondered before turning around, seeing how the energy rose, even exceeding the height of very large, forcing Ben to look up. An identical, very large being appeared, mostly black, with blue and white, its blades with a neon edge, metal on its feet, and the Ultimatrix dial on its chest, with a different shape than Ben's. Were you saying something, Tennyson? Izuku asked mockingly, being 2 times bigger than Ben, measuring 125 meters tall. Before Ben could do anything, a knee to his stomach made him twist, before being hit by a hammer blow to the back. After that, Izuku grabbed him by his 2 shoulder blades before spinning on his axis. The wind swirled, but before a tornado could form, Izuku let go of his rival, sending him flying through the sky. Meanwhile, Ben, stunned, could only see everything blurry, until he felt a strong pain that brought him back to reality. Opening his eyes, Tone, who was in the forest, unfortunately for him, saw a large amount of energy forming around something flying at sonic speeds towards ELZ before turning into the negative version of Tocuster's residential clock, which landed in the stomach of his enemy, causing him to run out of air. Izuku brought out his left arm, where cosmic energy accumulated, before throwing a punch at Ben's Omnitrix, causing a large amount of electrical rays and lightning, before the entire place was enveloped by a green light. When it disappeared, it showed Ben lying in a crater, back in his human form, with Izuku still turned into a very large one, who returned to normal. Advice: don't think, and if you do, think fast, act in combat. It's okay to analyze your enemy, but don't be surprised by what he is capable of doing. Just adapt and concentrate on defeating him, not licking his feet, said Izuku. We began to walk towards Ben. He's sorry, but I missed something. Since when does a villain give advice to a hero? Asked Ben, confused, while he stands up, seeing how Red Clock just shrugged his shoulders. I'm not as bad as I seem, Izuku answers in a funny way. Says the man who cuts off heroes' limbs and destroys their bodies so they can't use their quirks. And if they recover, their quirks end up destroyed, Ben said angrily, narrowing his gaze, only snorting annoyed when he hears Red Clock's laughter. You don't want to know about those topics, besides, they earned it, Izuku said, amused, but at the same time seriously. As they both spoke, they spun around in a circle, looking directly into each other's faces. What you're doing isn't justice or appropriate punishment, you're just hurting people you want to save, the innocent, Ben said seriously. Do you think heroes do that? Izuku asked, interested in the brown-haired boy's answer. Of course, after all, being a hero isn't about fame, but about protecting and saving the innocent, Ben said seriously and determinedly. Even in his eyes, Izuku noticed a unique glow. He stopped in place. At the same time, Ben stopped as well, both of them staring directly into each other's faces. Good, keep going like this. Although you need to mature and develop your own ideals and values, you are on the right path, but everything depends on where each and every word or action you do will take you in the future. So stay on the ideal path of a true hero, Izuku answers calmly. That's the idea, Ben said before pressing the dial on his Omnitrix. Its place was taken by Humongousaur. Well, then it proves that you are capable of moving forward, even if you step on the bottom and get stained by the mud, said Izuku before being enveloped by a red light, now turning into his Humongousaur version from another universe. They both moved and a punch was connected to the other's jaw, before a fight began where punches went back and forth, both receiving the punch from their enemy. Ben stepped back, feeling how Izuku's blows were much more powerful than his own, so he opted for his second option. Starting to grow, plates formed on his body, like thorns from his tail to his spine reaching 20 meters, before launching a hammer blow. At that, Izuku grew, managing to retain Ben's blow from Izuku. As he grew, it didn't take even 10 seconds before reaching his maximum height, now being 42 meters, with his clothes adjusting to the plates that formed on his body and the thorns that protruded all over his body. Izuku threw his punch, which was received by Ben, who crossed his arms in X and stepped back, growling in pain. "How the hell do you have better aliens?" Ben asked angrily. "I would tell you, but unfortunately the reason for that is linked to the origin of my Ultimatrix, so I'm sorry," Izuku said before charging at Ben, who prepared himself. Even at a disadvantage he wouldn't give up. He managed to hold Izuku's fists, but the latter lifted him with ease before slamming him hard against the ground, creating a large cut, and then hitting him with a stomp on the stomach, causing him to complain of pain. "Do you think you can beat me one-on-one? Tennyson, I learned how to counter each of my transformations and I know how to fight and beat them, and my forms are several times more powerful and better than yours. What makes you think you will beat me?" Izuku said seriously. "I'm stubborn enough to win," Ben said, applying all his willpower to his muscles, which grew enough and incessantly reached 28 meters in size, managing to push Izuku's foot away, who snorted amused. Well, then let's see how long you can last," said Izuku, being enveloped by a red wave of power, entering his supreme humongousaur form, obviously, considerably reducing his size. Ben got up from the ground, sighing, returning to his 20 meters and looking at Izuku seriously. "I don't understand. What is this Ultimatrix, and what are the Supreme ones?" "You mentioned it more than once," Ben said seriously. "Supreme, the best version of the aliens, the future version of each one in a sudden death environment, more powerful and suitable for combat," Izuku said with a smile. "You're a bucking bastard, the Omnitrix wasn't created for that," Ben exclaimed angrily. He began to walk towards the Supreme Vaxasaur. "The Omnitrix is much for peace, besides this is not Omnitrix, it is Ultimatrix, and I plan to fulfill its goal of existence, to surpass the Omnitrix," said Izuku with determination. "Ha ha ha, as if that were going to happen," Ben said sarcastically. "Your statement is complete ignorance. Unlike you, I know each and every secret of the Omnitrix and Ultimatrix. I am capable of creating the perfect Omnitrix. But really, where's the fun in challenges? Believe me, if I wanted, your Omnitrix would be nothing more than a 90s version compared to our present," Izuku said with a smile, before going against Ben, who did the same. They both threw a punch that released a shockwave that sent Ben backwards and rolled on the ground, knocking down several trees. "Don't you understand? Beating me with brute force will only end up killing you," Izuku said as we began to walk towards him. "Dude, villains don't usually help heroes with advice," Ben said, standing up. "I'm not like the other villains," Izuku said, shrugging his shoulders and turning his hands into cannons. He began to shoot, generating large explosions and causing a large fire. Apart from that, Ben was sent backwards, rolling on the ground before returning to his human form. I breathed heavily and in pain, trying to get up, which I managed with some difficulty. Meanwhile, Izuku just walked through the fire, walking towards it. "Are you giving up already?" I asked, tilting my head. "You're not going to kill me?" Ben asked, looking him in the eyes. "You may be a monster, but there are rules, and those are not to hurt the innocent, not to kill, and not to do things without reason against anyone without having a motive, or something that gives me the reason to do it," Izuku explained honestly. "Well, I wasn't expecting that, but anyway, it's time to be a hero," said Ben, pressing the dial of the Omnitrix, being enveloped by a green light. Izuku felt a sharp pain in his chest and stepped back a few meters, dragging his feet on the ground and leaving a mark in his path. In front of him, a white robot with green and black stood in front of him, with several parts of green energy where particles of a duller shade of green constantly move like bubbles, these being located as cylinders on the arms, shoulders, chest in the shape of an Omnitrix, and on the head. The Omnitrix is on a belt. "Take it, you idiot, what the hell am I?" said Ben triumphantly, although he was confused by what he saw. Heh, I didn't expect that at all, but whatever, it doesn't matter the race, but if you want, you can call him Automix, Izuku said with an amused smile. Automix, yeah. That sounds good, Ben said cheerfully. Izuku just rolled his eyes before turning his hands into cannons and firing. Automix spread his arms where he released a wave of atomic power that made the bone missiles explode, before starting to fly and go at high speed towards Izuku, who like his enemies charged at him. Where they collided fists, with the result that Izuku was sent backwards, although he landed professionally on his feet. Ha me na! Ben began to say, forming energy in his hands. Ha me na, ha me na. He finished performing his technique before launching them at Izuku, who crossed his arms to protect himself. A huge explosion of nuclear energy was generated with the impact of the power sphere, and Izuku, who was sent rolling on the ground, where he would engrave the claws of his right arm on the ground and stomp hard to stop. Okay, that hurt a little, but whatever, let's see if he also adapts to his new transformation. That will tell me how developed his abilities are with his other aliens. Izuku thought to himself, before changing transformations, becoming the Supreme Spider Monkey Textorpithecus. He moved on his spider legs, easily and agilely avoiding Ben's ranged attacks, before fully opening his head and firing his web, which hit the bench across Ben's body, with his arms being pulled back and pinned/glued to the ground. But he saw how the energy of Ben's body shone more intensely, and he broke free from his web, literally disintegrating with its heat. After that, Ben stretched out and made a movement with his arms, which revealed a trail of energy behind him, before it disappeared and all the energies in his body shone brightly in a fleeting flash. Nuclear winner! Ben shouted, to which Izuku sighed, knowing the pain that was coming. A huge explosion of energy was generated throughout the area, even a pillar of atomic energy rose into the sky. When the energy finished bombarding and destroying everything, only the smoke screen remained behind it. Ha ha ha, what a great transformation this is nuclear power, said Ben animatedly, as they walked towards the smoke screen. You call that nuclear power? Asked a voice similar to Atomix's from the smoke. At that moment a hand with the same green energy as Ben emerges from the smoke, only it is red. I connect an uppercut to the alien's jaw, before grabbing his face and releasing red nuclear energy, which sent Automix rolling backwards into the ground. Coming out of the smoke, Red Clock was shown turned into his Automix version. Well, let's see it, after he looked at himself before sighing sadly. At least I can say that I am humble, said Ben, comparing Atomix's appearance with that of his counterpart, who was facebound by the idiocy that the hero said. By the Celestial Sapien, how I wish I could become Supreme Automix and walk your ass around so you'll never forget it, but that's when I remember that Supreme Automix destroys solar systems, as if he were a human stepping on an ant. Red Clock said in despair. Luckily for him, Ben didn't hear him from the distance where they were. Well, it doesn't matter how you look, it matters who beats you now, Ben said seriously, preparing to fight. Izuku just stood in a combat stance, his left arm raised in front, his right arm back, also turning his torso, with his hand in the shape of a Phara, his right leg bent, while the left one was stretched forward, both feet apart. Ben closed his eyes, before creating nuclear energy in his hands and bringing them together, launching a blast of energy at Izuku. Izuku threw his right hand forward, firing a colossal blast of nuclear energy at Ben, which completely went over the Omnitrix bearer's body and completely enveloped him, generating a huge explosion. After that Izuku sighed, still not used to the technique he developed with Automix and the instant release of a large amount of concentrated energy, and manipulating it completely. But that didn't matter now, he could adapt to it in a moment later. Now, he had to get the fool somewhere safe. And that's what he did, walking over to Ben, whose Omnitrix had a red light instead of the usual green. Izuku analyzed it, and saw that it was mostly fine, so he transformed into Dark Master and enveloped the teen in his dark matter, before they both disappeared. Scene change. Psyos, said Niza, hitting the table with one of his legs, to see on a news helicopter how Ben lost against Izuku. Which I appreciate at his side. Both rodent and alien saw each other, Nizu in the darkness of the hood, and Izuku in the darkness of the animal's eyes. "I think this is yours," said Izuku, leaving Ben on the ground. "I don't understand. You have the opportunity to finish us off and free yourself from future problems," said Nizu incredulously. "Rodent, I do not wish to do evil for the sake of doing evil. I have my reasons why I attack anyone I see in a mesh suit or a drug addict on the streets. Besides, this one has the potential to be a real hero. You better not ruin it." Izuku responds before being enveloped by his dark matter and disappearing from the place. Nizu clicked his tongue as he disappeared. Even the security system didn't activate. They didn't detect him. It was as if there was nothing in the place where he was standing a few seconds ago, and they didn't activate with Ben's detecting that he was unconscious. Nizu just got out of his seat and walked over to Ben to serve him. There was definitely a bittersweet taste in his mouth right now. Chapter 18, Strengthening Ties. Narrator POV. "Damn, that has to hurt," Izuku said calmly, while drinking a milkshake. Tamura was stamped on the wall across the room. "I see you're in the mood," Kurojairi said to see Izuku's small smile. "What can I say? I beat the one who would be my rival, although we didn't swear anything, we didn't talk to confirm it, and I'm just saying it casually," Izuku said before taking his milkshake again. He heard footsteps running towards him, to which he only sighed in annoyance. Tamura tried to touch him, but an energy barrier prevented him. "A cautious man is worth two," Kurojairi said. "Let's see how Izuku avoided his death." "What can I help you with?" Izuku asked, turning to look at Tamura. "You bucking incompetent, you have every damn chance to kill them, and you don't do it," Tamura said with hatred. "I think you mean the heroes." He lets out a sigh. "Look, I'm not you and you're not me. I don't understand how much of an animal you are, and you don't understand what I think or do all day, so let's leave this discussion as a tie and accept it," Izuku said before turning around and taking his milkshake. "Ties are bad, I hate ties, who wants to tie if you can win?" Tamura said angrily, trying to touch Izuku, but it was impossible. "Well, since..." He deactivates his energy field and his armor unfolds, enveloping him completely. "Before they fight, I would like to talk to you a little, Izuku," said a television that suddenly turned on. "What do you want to know, all for one?" said Izuku after contracting his helmet, holding Tamura in an energy field. "I think we've been together long enough for you to say what your quirk is," said All for One. My quirk is copy and paste. It allows me to copy a who and paste it, but of course, I can't rewrite that information in my genetics, so, to copy my first quirk, that one is permanent and I can't paste any more. I can copy more quirks, but not use them," explained Izuku calmly. Obviously lying. "I understand, so you copied Tennyson's quirk and since then you only have that quirk, but that doesn't explain those forms you call supreme," said All for One thoughtfully, before being serious at the end. "Only forms that are stronger than the originals. I managed to surpass my limits, although that almost killed me and left me in a coma for a while," answers Izuku, lying calmly. "That's it, lie like I taught you," Albedo said in his mind, almost, and he smiles proudly. "I understand. If there are no problems, you will give a DNA sample to the scientist," I order All for One. "Okay, first I'm going to my lab and I'll leave the DNA sample there," Izuku said calmly, before becoming Dark Master and disappearing from the place. He reappeared in his laboratory, where he returned to his human form and sighed in annoyance. "What I have to do to keep them satisfied, whatever, now I have to make an artificial quirk identical to what I mentioned and replicate blood. Obviously, it's not going to be like mine so as not to relate to them and leave evidence that I know them. 5 minutes of my life wasted," Izuku said complaining, as he heads to a table with chemical equipment. Time later. "Here you go, old man," Izuku said calmly, handing a container to Dr. Garaki. "It took you 10 minutes. The doctor said sternly. Izuku just shrugged. "It took me a while to go and come back, besides I couldn't find my syringes," Izuku answers calmly. "Whatever, you can go now," Garaki said disinterestedly. "That thing will malfunction," Izuku said calmly, seeing an open corpse lying on a seat. "And what do you know, brat? I have more knowledge about this than you," Garaki said annoyed, to which Izuku only shook his head without before sighing. You should find a better biotechnology quirk, and implant an organic chip that will help you modify his body and allow you to install more quirks as if they were cartridges from those old games from the era before quirks. Izuku explained before turning around and starting to walk. Good afternoon, Albedo greeted in Izuku's mind. I see that you woke up after your resting state. By the way, did you analyze All for One's drug? Izuku asked in his mind. Yes, and it's not a big deal. It's literally like making orange juice for yourself. Apart from that, it's so poorly made that it has several waste products that only ruin it and don't let it bring out its true potential. Albedo explained lazily. Izuku just laughed a little, leaving Garaki's laboratory and starting to walk through the halls. It's to be expected. The products are not the best when those of the shadow world do that. The products that companies make and sell on the black market are better. Izuku said, entering his laboratory. The metal doors slammed shut and a disc on it turned, hearing several mechanisms and locks close, so that then a force field of energy would activate throughout the room and become invisible. At that moment, Albedo with a physical body appeared in front of him, sitting at a table, resting her hands on them and smiling at her bearer. Speaking of companies, will you continue with your hobby of hacking them and giving all the secret and dark information anonymously to that detective who is friends with Almight? Albedo asked with a smile. Izuku smiled lightly at her, while moving to the main table of the laboratory. I'll leave it aside for now. The civilians are already starting to riot because of that, Izuku said, taking a tool created by him. And the other hobby that is the same but with heroes? Albedo asked, tilting her head, walking with her hands behind her back and sneaking up on Izuku. Likewise, the civilians are making chaos for every fake hero that is exposed, Izuku responded calmly while recalibrating the Ultimatrix. Puff, how boring, Albedo said in a bad mood. I never said that you couldn't do it for me, Izuku responded with a smile. That only caused a wider smile on Albedo, who, literally, turned on a light above her head and approached Izuku from behind, before suddenly hugging him, scaring the teenager. You are definitely better than Albedo, Albedo said with a smile, resting her head on the shoulder of the black-haired man with green streaks, although she had to lean enough for that. Izuku was very short compared to the body designed by her, which is 1.80 while Izuku is 1.66. Stop talking nonsense. I doubt I am better than him, Izuku said, slightly nervous. You are better than him, even if you don't believe it. Well, in personality, tastes, ideals, well, in general, being a person and a living being, you are better than him, also possessing a potential that makes him look ridiculous. He being a Galvan, a race that is naturally intelligent, achieved great things. But removing that factor and comparing you to him, your potential and adaptive capabilities are superior. It would be like comparing a human to an ant. Literally, your current intellect is around 87% of an average cerebrocrustacean of the universe where I come from, and believe me. Remember that the aliens in my universe are more powerful and capable than their counterparts in this world and the Prime World. Apart from that, I plan to make you surpass Albedo no matter what, to the point that you humiliate him, Albedo said with a loving smile and resting her body on Izuku, who blushed from the contact. How much little love F for your creator, Izuku said, looking away, with Albedo chuckling under her breath. Does it matter? The idiot only created me as a computer at his service. Unlike him, you saw me as a person, you updated and improved me to obtain my own reasoning and consciousness, literally. In front of the two of them a hologram is projected, consisting of a structure of threads and branches of energy, as if everything was a conscious and wise mind, forming each neuron of it. You see? You did that, you perfected yourself, and that's why you're my favorite and you're better than him. Albedo finished speaking, before hugging Izuku affectionately, causing great embarrassment in the teenager. It wasn't a big deal, Izuku said, embarrassed, causing Albedo to laugh. Whatever you say, stubborn idiot, but whatever, you have to go to class in a few hours and don't send a clone in your place, you have to take a break, Albedo said before separating from Izuku and ruffled his hair. How do you want me to improve and perfect the Ultimatrix if you don't allow me? Izuku asked, now annoyed, fixing his hair. You don't have to force the inevitable. With Supreme Albedo, Transmuting malware you would be able to transform, At least the Omnitrix functions in the Ultimatrix, into the Ultimate Omnitrix, so you should take a break with all this. So much stress and mental exhaustion do not generate anything good. Albedo said sternly, holding Izuku to hug him and take him to the other side of the laboratory, where the rest chair was. This is stupid, what are you now? My Wani-chan or Oka-san? Izuku asked, rolling his eyes and sarcastically. At that, Albedo just frowned behind Izuku, but an idea came to her mind. I can be the one you like the most, my porter. Albedo whispered in her ear, at the same time, sighing softly, but loud enough for Izuku to feel her breath. HHY. What the hell are you doing? Izuku asked nervously and upset, feeling his heart start to pump faster, and a strong blush to the ears appeared on his face. Hee, calm down, you look like you're going to have a cardiac arrest at any moment. How about you sleep for a while, you need it. Albedo said before dropping onto the couch, taking Izuku with her. Stop bothering me, I'm fine. Izuku said, sighing in annoyance. He tried to move and separate from Albedo, but noticed how she was the one who had superior strength than him. Comparing the null difficulty she had in holding him back, he calculated that she had the possible strength of a tetraman. You just sleep, you know that I only want the best for you. Albedo said before her body began to vibrate. Once it stopped, Izuku noticed how her body felt like a marshmallow. He blushed from the shame and embarrassment he felt at that moment. Albedo made him cuddle up to her. Izuku, you don't have to be nervous, it's just sleeping and that's it. She spoke close to his ear, causing Izuku to swallow dryly for a reason he didn't understand. He takes a deep breath and closes his eyes. Remember that I'm here for you, whenever you want and for whatever you need. Albedo finished speaking. Now she was snuggling into Izuku. This same one captured what she said and did what she asked, managing to relax enough to not be so nervous and uncomfortable. Albedo hugged him a little and rested her head on the neck of her carrier, who, like her, was falling asleep. Some time later. What a day! Izuku sat at his work table, waiting for the arrival of the professor. Meanwhile, he took out his phone and began to look at some things. Meanwhile, through his medical/visor gear, he saw some data that he collected the time he stood while fighting Ben. Since that fight, a week passed, and in that same fight, he had analyzed the Omnitrix of this universe, finding that it is the original and not the definitive version that Albedo had told him. At least overcoming this is not a big deal, already in itself, my aliens without counting the effect of the alpha mode, and now the improved and updated nanotechnology and the sub-neo energy. These last two things also enhance my transformations, their capabilities, skills and above all, strength and power. Well, leaving that aside, my aliens are stronger, since compared to those of this universe, my universal counterparts are more powerful and different. I would only need to update some systems. This would only take me about 3 months with me and my clones working without stopping, although using the simulator would help me a lot. It clears my mind and takes away the limitations of the physical and the flesh, giving me unlimited mental capacity. Size. I would have to take into account other aspects. I still have to include systems and functions that the definitive Omnitrix has. By the celestial sapiens, what a headache. Izuku murmured almost silently, but everyone heard them, with the only defect that each of his words was illegible for them. Izuku. Ready to make babies? Mei called and asked, approaching her friend. Once again Izuku saw how everyone in the class became upset, and some spit out their drinks. Inevitably he laughed out loud. God, I think I met someone great, Izuku said with a cheerful smile. Mei blushed slightly. What? She asked, stunned. Nothing, it's better to wait for the teacher and see what he tells us, Izuku said calmly and with a slight smile, now looking forward. I think I taught you to act very well, although your acting skills and emotional control fall once you are put against the wall or behind the scenes. Albedo mocked. Izuku slightly backed away but managed to control himself not to blush with embarrassment and shame. Yes, you're right, now that I think about it, what will we do today? Mei wondered curiously. Minera sat next to Izuku, who looked at her and then saw another work table, which had a sign with Mei's full name on it. He just shook his head and remembered what the All-for-One infiltrator had said, about how in 2 days they would have a school trip. and that the same classes that participated in the last test would participate. Izuku quickly understood the director's idea about joining the classes in the tests. On behalf of the heroes, to fight against more quirks that are not only from their classmates, those from the general course to have more opportunities in the sports festival event, and those from the support class to see how their inventions work and if they get ruined or broken, to see what they can improve. I think today we chose the class representative, Izuku said with a shrug. But that's only in the general courses and hero courses. Our representative sample is the Sensei Power Loader, Izuku said with a smile, while working on a small machine that he took out of his backpack. How well, whatever? He realizes what she works on. What does she work on? He asked curiously. In an explorer drone, she answers simply and without giving it much thought. I don't know, you forgot my glasses. Proceed to hold my lenses and put them on the girl. And remember not to cross the blue wire with Amari dash. Izuku said in a stern tone, but at that moment, Mio's device explodes, taking them both with a layer of burnt black. Oh, he, I didn't know that would happen suddenly. Mei laughed carefree. Low and don't work with activated devices and receiving an electric current, Izuku said in a bad mood, while the girl just laughs nervously. Some time later. Mei, don't be playing, Izuku said watching how Mei was working on some metal boots. Don't be boring, just because the teacher left you in charge doesn't mean we can't have fun, Mei said, jumping, the notes hitting the ground with a spring, as if it were a jackhammer, allowing her to jump higher and higher. I warned you, Izuku said sighing. He only snorted annoyed when he heard an explosion and saw how Mei shot towards the door. Luckily for him, it was opened at the last moment, and she passed by. Izuku raised an eyebrow and heard a cry of surprise and a feminine moan. Walking towards the door, he found a strange scene for him, but for the men around and some women, it seemed somewhat strong in tone, which made everyone blush except for Izuku, who only tilted his head to see how Mei was lying on top of Momo, with her breasts in the pink-haired girl's face. Izuku sighed and walked towards the two, taking his pink chaotic friend. He picked her up and shook the dirt off his clothes. Be more careful, you could have gotten hurt, Izuku said sternly. Worried? Mei asked mockingly. Of course you are, although recent and self-controlled, my friend, Izuku said seriously, causing Mei to blush, who did not expect that answer, but a negative one. He, that's how it will be, Mei said with a triumphant smile, hugging Izuku who was embarrassed. Damn, what happened? Momo asked, getting up from the ground and shaking the dust off her Yui uniform. Nothing more than just an event that will lead me to improve my babies, Mei said with determination and with her hands on her hips. Hey, babies! Momo exclaimed, surprised and upset. At that, Izuku let out a sigh. He refers to his inventions, Izuku said simply. Oh, no, I expected someone to refer to them as babies, Momo said, taking care of her words and in a strange tone. Well, everyone has their way of being, that's good. The bad thing is when they generalize, or those social and radical groups that take away the face and the right to explode from those who do need it and are worth it, Izuku said calmly. At that moment, he loved girls and some other people saw him strangely. My things anyway, what brings you here, Momo? Izuku asked, crossing his arms and looking at the girl with curiosity. Am I Momo? The raven-haired girl asked, surprised. Izuku just shrugged. I'm sorry, I know you're used to being addressed by your name, but I really don't like referring to others with their last names, Izuku explained with his eyes closed and calmly. Well, I understand. And I came to make some improvements to my suit, Momo said, answering Izuku's previous question, who laughed. Are you here for the suggestions I made you? Izuku asked with a smile, embarrassed to Momo, who looked away. That's right, I came for what you recommended. Apart from that. He takes out a box from behind his back and hands it to Izuku, while making a reference. And I have come to apologize for my lack of respect on the day of the hero versus villains class, Momo said in a polite and respectful way. Instantly Izuku blushed furiously, looking embarrassed and ashamed. Hey, why you don't need to do that, Izuku said nervously and with a strong blush. It is necessary, if not, how do I show you that I am sorry? Besides, it is not only embarrassing for you, so please accept it. Momo said, who, like Izuku, had a blush on her face, although hers was barely visible. Bye-bye, said Izuku, taking the gift from Momo. After that she stood up and both looked away from each other. And what happened to the suit? Mei asked after a while of silence, making the two jet black ones jump, one with green highlights. Yes, thanks for reminding me of that. Come on, come in, Momo, your suit will literally be ready in a jiffy, Izuku said before entering the workshop again, being followed by a Momo who was calming down little by little and an enthusiastic Mei. Once inside, Izuku went to his bag, where he left Momo's gift, and went to his work table, where he has several bracelets. He took one and a holographic panel appeared, which brought out stars and Mei and a face of surprise to everyone else present, including Momo. Wow, I didn't know you knew how to make tactile holograms, they are so rarely seen, Mei said in amazement, next to Izuku, who chuckled. It's not a big deal, they're easy to make if you have the resources, Izuku said calmly, before recalibrating the bracelet. What are you doing? Momo asked, standing next to Izuku. I'm just adjusting it for you, Izuku said before the bracelet deactivated the hologram and began to change shape and color, now still seeing a bracelet that would cover the forearm and not now just the wrist, being red now. Well, try it, said Izuku, handing it to Momo. What would this be like? I asked, tilting my head. Just touch this button and the holographic interface will be displayed. You see that deploy outfit button? Well, it equips you with your heroine outfit, which, by the way, you have to design yourself. That's why that outfit design option, the function is a bit obvious, but first, it's better that you dress in a better way and in a more comfortable way. Mei, take her to the changing rooms and give her something comfortable, said Izuku with a smile, before turning to look at his friend. Why me? Mei asked, frowning. Why is it that whenever a man approaches the girls' locker room he gets beaten? Izuku said with a smile and with honesty and firmness. That's not entirely true, it depends on several things, Momo said with a smile and a drop of sweat in anime style, looking at Izuku, who just shrugged. Whatever you say, but seriously, classes are already ending and recess is starting, so show up, Izuku said, looking at a digital clock on the wall. You're right, we better hurry up, Mei said, holding Momo and dragging her. Some time later. Are these supposed to be comfortable? Momo exclaimed from the other side of the curtain. As I understand it, yes it is, Mei said with a smile on the other side. I'm in my underwear, Momo said in a murmur that only the pink-haired girl heard. And it's comfortable, anyway, you'll be wearing your hero clothes on top, by itself you do that, Mei said calmly, but she didn't receive any answer. Wait, you don't wear anything under your hero clothes? Mei asked curiously. Don't tell anyone, Momo exclaimed, embarrassed and annoyed. I don't understand why you're angry. I don't wear a bra, Mei said, confused by the girl's reaction. That doesn't help, Momo exclaimed with a deep blush. Well, anyway, try out Izuku's new baby, Mei said cheerfully and happily. On the other side of the curtain, Momo put on the bracelet. She had already made a design for her hero costume, so she only pressed the Unfold Costume option. At that moment, thousands of threads unfolded from the bracelet that began to completely wrap her and organize her. It didn't take more than 5 seconds, and by the time she realized it, she already had her heroine costume on. It was the same redesign that Izuku had done to his original suit idea, with the difference of now having the bracelet on his left arm and another identical one but without a hologram or LED projector on the right arm. Without a doubt he preferred that design to the one he had originally in mind. Apart from that, it was not only more comforting to not leave his body very visible, but also, in several aspects, practical. Meanwhile, Izuku was analyzing a drop of blood, precisely his mother's, to formulate a cure for the Red Death. I see you didn't give complex nanotechnology to that wealthy woman, Albedo said in her mind, to which Izuku just shrugged. I have no reason to give it to you, Izuku said calmly. Whatever, as long as you make sure not to give the heroes more technology than they should, this won't hurt your ass later, Albedo said sternly. I take that into account. Besides, it will only be nanotechnology for clothing, it won't be like mine, and if I give them the one I used in the Beautiful versus Villains test, it's not like anything will happen. I would defeat them quickly with Lord Star, or with some device I create to deactivate their nanotechnology. Izuku said calmly in a murmur, beginning to analyze the sample under a microscope. We're here! Mei exclaimed, suddenly appearing and hugging Izuku from behind. Don't do that, Izuku murmured without being heard. Midoriya-san! If it's not too much trouble, could you explain a little more about my outfit? Momo asked curiously, approaching the pink emerald duo. Hey, sure, yes I can, just let me keep this, said Izuku, made to see what he was working on. I was about to ask, but in quick movements and in blurs, Izuku put everything away in a tightly closed box. Don't ask, Izuku said simply and with a kind smile that made Mei uncomfortable. Who chose to do that? Well, starting with the explanation, as you have noticed, your clothes are composed of nanotechnology. This same technology will allow you to choose the design of your clothes, at the same time, as long as there is enough matter stored in the nanomachines. They will be able to reconstruct the suit and reset it to the default form by the design you chose. This would come hand in hand with your quirk. Since you create matter, the nanomachines will take it and reorganize it to rebuild your suit, although that is the limit. It does not have the same technology as the nanomachines used in the practice of heroes and villains, so they cannot create weapons objects for now. Izuku explained calmly and with a proud smile. Wow, I really don't know what to say. This is the first time I've seen and heard about the implementation of nanotechnology in hero suits. By chance, is there anything else I need to know? Momo expressed herself with great astonishment and enthusiasm, before asking curiously. Izuku swore he saw question marks and exclamation marks in his head. Yes, although now we have to go to recess, I want to eat something, Izuku said with a smile and scratching the back of his head. Oh sure, no problem at all, Momo said, nodding her head. Well, and you're coming with me, said Izuku pointing at Mei, who was nervous. Me? She asked innocently, to which Izuku nodded. Yes, you will come with me. Every time I leave you will not eat or rest, and you will stay here making your inventions or building something really dangerous, so you will come with me to at least eat something, Izuku said severely and crossed his arms. You are not my dad to take me away from my baby, Mei said, crossing her arms and looking at Izuku with her eyes narrowed. Izuku didn't say anything, he just looked at her with a poker face. Some time later. Well, bon appetite, said Izuku, sitting at one of the dining room tables, next to him and handcuffed from the right wrist to Izuku's left wrist, Mei, who was forced by the dark-haired man with green locks, still wearing his workshop suit. Say "Aaa" to the little airplane, said Izuku with a spoon in his hand and pointing it at Mei's mouth. The girl just shrugged and proceeded to eat what Izuku offered her. It's delicious, Mei said with stars in her eyes. That's right, it was prepared by the hero lunch rush, said Izuku with a bright smile. May I notice this? She smiled with her head slightly tilted. A fan? The pink-haired girl asked curiously, to which Izuku nodded. That's right, I like the way he treats victims of natural, criminal or villain-caused accidents. Didn't you hear about his latest work, where he fed more than 1,000 people who were victims of a natural disaster, along with feeding the homeless yesterday? In just 5 hours, he literally prepared enough food for more than 5,000 people, Izuku said with an enthusiastic and admiring smile. But what the girl noticed most was his most sincere and pure honesty that she had never seen before. Oh, I see, I hadn't heard about that, you are definitely a great person, Mei said with a smile, to which Izuku nodded in agreement. Excuse me, may I sit down? Two voices said at the same time. Both of them looked up to see Gwen and Momo trying to put their tray on the right side of a confused Izuku. Both teenagers looked up and stared into each other's eyes, an awkward silence filling their surroundings. I'd better deactivate myself, his presence only means that Tennyson is nearby, Albedo said before deactivating, causing Izuku to sigh. Chapter 19, Day of Troubles. Narrator POV. This is delicious, Izuku murmured happily as he ate the food on his tray. At her side, Gwen, in front of her, Mei and Momo. Both the emerald pink duo ate happily, while Gwen and Momo only looked on with their eyes half closed. And since when have you known each other? I asked nonchalantly with curiosity. What do you mean? Izuku asked curiously. You and Gwen, how long have you known each other? I say this because you didn't need her measurements to make her hero costume. That means you already have them, and you made her equipment beforehand. Dojo Mei innocently, causing a laugh from Izuku and a strong blush from Gwen. Well, we met in our childhood, around 8 or 7 years old. Izuku answers calmly before eating again. But I never gave him my measurements, she exclaimed nervously, giving Izuku a funny smile, which embarrassed the girl even more. And well, yes, we met when we were 9, although we had to separate when we were 10, Gwen responded, calming down and looking away from Izuku, who brought his hand to his mouth to laugh and not be noticed by anyone. Then dash, Momo said, but at that moment the UA alarm sounded everywhere. Quick! Evacuate the school! Exclaimed a third-year student, beginning to run towards the exit. Izuku just sighed in annoyance. He knew what was happening very well, since he knew the plan beforehand. Now that I thought about it, why didn't they ever tell him anything about the issue at the UA? Well, he would know at any moment. By the time he realized it, he found himself in a sea of people. What the hell happened? I was only distracted for a few seconds. Izuku thought to himself, now, realizing that a guy with spikes had his clothes caught in his spikes. At that, Izuku just sighed, realizing that he was dragged into the sea of despair. He just grabbed hold of the other student and started moving through the crowd, who were pushing each other. For a moment his right eye flashed beneath his medical patch and he was about to start punching, when several of them elbowed him in the face or weak parts of his body. I end up being pushed against the window, where I just huff in annoyance with a hateful growl. This is humiliating, he thought to himself, until he looked out the window and saw a large group of reporters. Those reporters, I saw them in the distance as I entered the academy. Damn, they're the reason for all of this. Izuku thought with annoyance, turning around and seeing how everyone ran like a pack of scared animals towards the exit. He just sighed and climbed onto the window frame where no one could hit him. Good idea, Amo Broccoli Head! Through the windows! He heard someone referring to him as a window was smashed. He just had his eyes on the bench to see how a student had jumped out of the window. To his disbelief and disbelief, others followed him. The UA is paying for it. I heard someone scream before hearing another window breaking and seeing a rock battleship jump to the lower floors. Izuku just hit himself in the face before sighing. Almost. A cry of despair and great anger. He just took out a device like a sheet of paper, a small square that fits between his fingertips, from his academy shirt and placed it on his cheek, sticking it like a band-aid. Listen up, everyone. He began to speak, the device on his cheek, increasing his voice like a megaphone and allowing everyone to hear him. It's not a villain infiltration or anything like that. It's just the reporters who managed to enter the UA. Izuku said with annoyance through his device, to which everyone heard him. Almost everyone doubted that, until they looked out the window and that was it. What Midoriya said was true, the reporters were walking outside the UA buildings, while several teachers made them back off. Once they saw that and trusted what the bush head or darkened broccoli said, everyone let out a sigh of relief, to which Izuku also let out his daily sigh of annoyance, before going down the stairs and shaking the dust and other dirt off his clothes. What a great day, Izuku thought sarcastically. Some time later. That was definitely brave of you, Gwen said to her friend who laughed nervously. Yeah, well, it wasn't a big deal, Izuku said, scratching the back of his head, smiling nervously. Ho ho, yes it was, and don't deny it. Thanks to you they didn't hit me and break the baby I'm carrying with me, Mei said with a big smile, while standing in front of Izuku, perhaps very close to him. Unfortunately for him, the girl spoke and acted at a time when Izuku had his guard down, causing him to blush furiously. It was admirable, that's true, as well as responsible on your part to seek order in the situation and calm everyone down, Momo said, nodding, which embarrassed and ashamed Izuku even more, who lowered his gaze and covered his face. Gee God, stop, said Izuku, embarrassed and nervously. That only got a laugh from Gwen, a giggle from Momo, who covered her mouth elegantly to simulate it, and a happy smile from Mei, who hugged Izuku with one arm around the neck. Why? This rarely happens, and from what I understand, there are few who do something, Mei said with a bright smile and her eyes closed. It's awkward, Izuku replied with a sigh. At that moment, the notification tone of Izuku's phone was heard, so he took it out and saw the message. What is it? Momo asked curiously, tilting her head. Nothing really, just a request from a client. Izuku answers calmly. Do you have work? Momo asks surprised. It's not a big deal. I just make inventions for the home or repair other technological or mechanical products that people break. Izuku answers calmly, then puts his phone away again. Wow, is it okay if I join? Mei asks excitedly. Ha ha ha, no, answers Izuku with a smile and a simple tone, along with closed eyes. That caused a white explosion of pink hair. Some time later. I don't understand why you wanted to accompany me, said Izuku with a box in his hand. Hey, come on, what's wrong with your best friend accompanying you? Asked Gwen at his side, walking next to him. At that, Izuku just shrugged his shoulders. It's not that, it's just that you could be doing more important things, Izuku said in a calm and relaxed manner. I don't really have anything important to do at home, so I decided to come here with you, Gwen said calmly, with her hands behind her back and smiling lightly at the dark-haired boy with green highlights who nodded resignedly. Damn, I won't have time to go to the lab, Izuku thought to himself, sighing internally. Oddly enough, that last thing worked for him. Meanwhile, Gwen walked calmly beside her friend, watching him carefully and analyzing him. Her vision, divided between the normal and the observation of Izuku's mana, which is green, but for some strange reason the mana that is in his forearm and right hand is in a red tone and black parts. She could see his current emotion, calm and disappointment. Really, her friend is sometimes a paradigm for herself. Feeling guilt from one moment to another or remorse, along with sadness, satisfaction and pride. Arrogance was also an emotion seen by her in him, but very rarely, and only towards people who are really idiots with him, or others. Now that I thought about it, it was worrying. I noticed how he has feelings and emotions of superiority, although he really ignores them, since he only sees people identical to Katsumi like that, although that tends to vary and sometimes it is with hatred and anger. But yes, he never showed it and continued speaking respectfully with those people. You shouldn't hide your true self, Gwen whispered, a reminder of her grandmother. Thoughtful, she continues to wander in her mind. Izuku didn't say anything and continued walking, keeping his emotions calm and under control. But in his mind several plans were forming after hearing what Gwen said. Unfortunately, he was distracted enough and let his guard down enough for someone to steal the box he was carrying with him. Damn, Izuku said angrily, seeing in the distance that it was the child from that almost abandoned orphanage. Seriously? Izuku, a child just stole from you? Gwen asked with a blank face. Don't scold me, he's distracted like you, Izuku said with a snort. I wasn't distracted, Gwen complained, looking away in embarrassment. Whatever, we have to catch up with him, Izuku said before starting to run. Gwen opened her eyes in surprise, seeing how her friend ran at great speed, even managing to overtake a moving car. By the Celestial Sapiens, is that his natural speed? I can't imagine how much he trained to get that, said Gwen, before being enveloped by a pink aura and jumping forward followed by another, beginning to move at high speeds. It didn't take long for her to reach Izuku's left side. He wasn't surprised in the least that his friend caught up to him so quickly. And what's the genius idea? Gwen asked with a mocking smile. Izuku just took something out of his jacket and showed it. Being a black metal ring, with a red LED. Izuku only ran faster, before jumping, spinning in the air and throwing the ring. Because of the kinetic thrust it had, the ring went even faster and had more momentum energy. It crashed into a light pole, then into a wall, and ended up getting caught on the boy's foot, who fell to the ground. What does that do? Asked Gwen, surprised to see how the child does not move. It is a denier of the electrical pulses of the nervous system. In a few words and in a simple way, it sends a wave through the entire nervous system, which repels the currents sent from the brain by it, and absolutely blocks any step, paralyzing whoever has it on. said Izuku calmly, slowing down until he was next to the child who could only move his eyes. Although it does not block the entire nervous system, it leaves a certain part activated so that whoever has the device does not die, said Izuku calmly, taking the box from the hands of the child, who was sweating with fear. That's not much for the kid, Gwen said angrily and frowning. Izuku just shrugged. It's not, it doesn't feel any pain. In fact, the device stimulates the body with electricity and allows relaxation and calm. Izuku answers calmly, giving the box to Gwen before carrying the child on one of his shoulders. What are you going to do? Asked Gwen, narrowing her eyes. Take him home. I know where he lives. It's not the first time he's stolen from me. Izuku answers before turning around and starting to walk, with Gwen who just shook her head and started to follow him. Some time later. Is this where it is? Gwen asked delicately to see the orphanage. If this is it, answers Izuku calmly, still with the child on his shoulder. I knocked on the door and then removed the device from the child's foot, which took a while for the child to regain full mobility in his body. It didn't take long for the door to be opened by the blind blonde woman, wearing the same dress that Izuku knew her by. Hello again, Izuku greeted with a smile. The woman instantly jumped to recognize him with her enhanced senses. As sir. Feels the presence of the child on the shoulder of the raven with green. Subaru-kun? Said the surprised woman. So that is your name, dwarf? Said Izuku mockingly, seeing that the child was already able to move. Put me down, the boy ordered while struggling. Gwen saw this and just sighed. The blonde woman was about to scold the boy. But at the brat's attitude, Izuku smiled sweetly and kindly, before spanking him, causing the boy to scream in pain. I don't like being robbed. The first was my fault, but the second, there is already a punishment, said Izuku with a terrifying kindness and in a sweet way. Angrying several people, especially women, taught him a thing or two about intimidation. Nile, who raised his head and looked over his shoulder, was terrified by the smile of the raven-haired man with green locks. Gwen trembled in place when she saw how his mana became terrifying and worthy of a horror movie. Meanwhile, the blind woman felt her instincts screaming at her to run away. But as it came, that terror in the three disappeared when Izuku sighed in annoyance and left the child on the ground. Anyway, miss, I have to talk to you and your husband about your son's behavior, Izuku said sternly before crossing his arms. Izuku, calm down, he's just a kid, Gwen said, putting a hand on the boy, who just shook his head. Gwen, I won't do it. As it is, it's not just that I'm upset because he stole from me twice, but because he could get into real trouble, even die if he steals or provokes some crazy guy out there. And besides, what does it matter if he's a child? If he continues like this in the future, it will be something worse, Izuku said seriously, to which her friend understood and nodded at what he said. It was a strong and understandable argument. At least I can help prevent someone from ending up like me, Izuku thought to himself, nostalgically and determined. Gwen just frowned at that feeling that emerged in Izuku. Izuku dash, Gwen said, but at that moment she would be interrupted. I'm really sorry, it won't happen again. I'll talk to him properly, said the woman, getting on her knees and making a reference. Izuku put all his willpower into not losing his tall posture and sighed in search of relief. He then extended his hand to the woman, who, thanks to her senses, noticed this. No need, miss, we would like to talk to you and your husband, Izuku said calmly. I don't have a husband. Subaru is not my blood son either, said the woman with anguish. Izuku felt at that and took the blonde's hand, before getting up and having her stand properly. Okay, then we will talk to you. Sigh. I want to clarify some things and please, let it be in private, said Izuku calmly. I understand, then come in, said the woman resignedly. But Isabella, he's a complete stranger, and if he wants to do something to you, Subaru said desperately. Izuku looked at him carefully and then looked at the woman. Possibly the woman already had stalkers on her. It wouldn't be a problem to take care of all of them. No problem, Subaru, nothing bad will happen, I promise you, said the woman now known as Isabella. With a kind and beautiful smile, she stroked the head of the boy, who murmured annoyed. Lie, thought Izuku and Gwen at the same time, the latter did not need her skills to see that it was a total lie on the part of the woman. They could even sense their fear and anxiety in the air. Perhaps something they both learned to detect from their experience in various situations. Some time later. "You know, I didn't expect you to do that," Gwen said as she walked down the street, hugging Izuku's right arm. I couldn't leave it like that," Izuku said calmly. They both stopped in front of Tennyson's house, who smiled fondly. "Hee, without a doubt I won the lottery to have you as a friend," said Gwen with a warm smile, the same smile that was reflected in Izuku. "The same goes for you, you are without a doubt my best friend," said Izuku. Gwen murmured something that he didn't understand, although he didn't give it much importance. "Well, see you tomorrow and we'll continue with your crazy plan," Gwen said with a smile after shaking her head. "That's how it will be, I hope everything goes well," Izuku said, sighing. "I doubt anything will go wrong, but anyway, before you go, I want to give you a reward for the idea you had," Gwen said with a smile, before taking Izuku's head. He was confused, but he didn't know what to expect, but the brunette gave him a kiss on the forehead. This only caused a strong blush on the raven-haired boy with green highlights. He, keep being so kind and gentle, Izuku," said Gwen with her eyes closed and a bright smile. "Why yes," said Izuku with difficulty, at the same time blushing. "I hope you get home safely, call if anything happens, don't doubt that I'll be there for you, see you tomorrow." Gwen said goodbye before turning around and walking towards her house. She waved goodbye, which was returned by a stunned Izuku before entering her home and closing the door behind her. At that moment, Albedo appeared beside him in the form of a hologram that only he can see. "Lovely couple," Albedo said with a kind smile and closed eyes. At that, Izuku blushed. He may not know much about romantic things, or the feeling that accompanies romantic relationships in various senses. But he had his own concept of a couple. Partner. A life partner with whom you will have various experiences throughout your life and who will be an important person for you if you manage to stay together and have offspring. Something simple, but still, it had strange meanings for him towards that term. "He's not my partner and you know it." Sighs. "I'm not interested in having a partner or boyfriend, whatever you want to call it," said Izuku before turning around and starting to walk. Albedo, who saw him, put her jealousy aside and sighed before appearing again at his side, watching as he walked away a few meters. "You should think more about the future, maybe learn more about love and related topics, maybe notice the person closest to you," Albedo said calmly and shamelessly. "You talk as if I don't see you every day," Izuku said simply, which caused her to blush. "I don't mean that, I mean something else," Albedo said firmly. What do you mean?" Izuku asked, turning his head, only to receive a punch from an Albedo that took physical form. Some time later. "Great, now you're giving me the silent treatment," said Izuku with annoyance, wearing his red clock suit. "I'll walk along a rooftop, before peering over the edge of it and looking down an alley, in front of the orphanage where that woman and the children are, who Izuku believes are orphans or were abandoned by their parents. He had several reasons for that. He just let himself fall and landed on the ground, among a group of men, who by their suits, were heroes. "It's Red Clock!" exclaimed one of them, alarmed, seeing how the teenager was enveloped by a red light. Its place was replaced by a large crustacean, with 6 sharp legs, and 2 arms that end in pincers, the right one being larger than the other. It has 4 eyes, the upper part of its shell is divided into 2 parts, forming 3 pieces that surround its brain. Its mouth is 2 closed jaws, with deployable pieces on its sides. It has bracelets as clothing and a belt with a metal edge, where the Ultimatrix symbol is found. Turned into Brainstorm, Izuku spun on his own axis, analyzing his enemies. 5 in total, 3 melee fighters, 2 ranged due to their equipment. He transformed into a crustacean turtle, and I'm just hungry, said one of the fake heroes, smiling. Shark Hero, a hero who is studied and presumed to be a cannibal, eating both villains, civilians and heroes who see him, causing the missing rate to increase by 0.12%. Izuku said coldly. The hero tensed instead. The Jump Twins, skilled in jumps, deadly acrobatics, and hand-to-hand fighters using kicks. Harassers of minors around the age of 13 are believed to be the fathers of 23 babies whose mothers were raped, with a pattern that continued over the past 3 years, all between the ages of 12 and 16. Izuku turned to look at the other two hand-to-hand fighters, twins who dress alike and who possess specialized boots for their mutation quirk. They tensed and looked at the alien crab angrily. Neuroshock, a hero who, in his original reboot, while showing off his powers, ends up electro-rigging a public pool and killing more than 100 people in the process, including children, adults, and the elderly. This was hidden by the Hero Public Safety Commission, to later make a new reboot in an arena where he would not make the same mistake again. Izuku said gracefully. The hero with electric weapons in the form of bracelets was terrified and looked at him in horror. And last but not least, Blood Trigger, a drug-addicted psychopath, murderer of his adoptive parents, who were the only ones to give him love and affection after being tortured and considered a villain by his biological parents. Izuku said, looking at the last hero, with tubes in his forearms. How do you know all this? Blood Trigger asked seriously. Everyone saw the crab's jaws rise. They didn't know why or how, but they were aware that it smiled. I'm investigating the heroes, you guys are one. I got the information from anonymous accounts, and for information theft, I just confirmed it now. Izuku said with fun and grace. Then we just have to kill you to shut you up, said Shark Hero walking towards Izuku. He just opened his shell showing his brain and released an electric ray that knocked the hero to the ground unconscious. Getting your hopes up as if you could beat me, what does that assure you? Izuku asked, tilting his body/head a little, with a funny and mocking tone. That there are more of us than you, said Neuroshock before raising his arms along with Blood Trigger. The first one fired an electric current at the crustacean, the second one fired needles of coagulated blood. Izuku just smiled, and covered himself with a force field, which even absorbed the hero's electrical energy, and repelled the needles of coagulated blood. Not bad, let me try it myself, Izuku said with amusement, before gathering electrical energy from the force field in front of him and firing a bolt of electricity at both heroes. The electricity hero reached his volt limit and fell to the ground unconscious, same case as the blood hero. I heard the ground breaking, and at the last moment, he grabbed a garbage can lid and used it as a shield, protecting himself from a double kick from the Jump's twins. He retreated about 6 meters backwards, but he stopped his push thanks to the fact that he stuck his paws in the ground. Not bad, they hit hard, they deserve that credit, Izuku said honestly. Shut up, you damn insect, both heroes said, going against each other and throwing a kick. Izuku grabbed both of their feet with his pincers without any difficulty, before generating electricity in them and electrocuting both of them. They fell to the ground unconscious. Pathetic, Izuku said disappointedly before walking among the unconscious ones. He took his largest claw towards the Ultimatrix, where a form of light was created, and when the light disappeared, it showed a pen drive. Then it changed shape, becoming a spider monkey, where he threw the pen drive at the wall and stuck it to it with his web, before jumping and climbing the alley wall and jumping again, reaching the roof. Where once there, he saw the police lights in the distance. It seemed that their confrontation caught someone's attention. Why did you leave the information collected by those heroes? You know very well that they will hide this, Albedo said, appearing at his side in the form of a hologram invisible to people except Izuku. Because the one who will receive it will be Detective Naomi Tsukachi. Being friends with All Might gives him power, Izuku said calmly, before walking away from the rooftop and starting to move. Unfortunately for him, some feathers got stuck in front of him, to which he sighed. Where are you in such a hurry? Asked the hero Hank with fun and in a relaxed manner. But if it's the government's dog, what's up? By the way, how is Lady Nagant? It's been a while since our last meeting where she hit my heart, Izuku said calmly, sitting on the floor. Things happened, said Hank looking away. I see, he finished breaking up. And enveloped by a red light, entering his ultimate spider monkey Textorpithecus form. Like last time? Hank asked, sighing. Where do I win? Yes, Izuku answers calmly. Yeah, about that, Hank said with a smile. Read Klurkok. They heard Endeavor scream in the distance, while his flash of fire was getting closer. Izuku only sighed for what was to come. Chapter 20. Playing with the Top 3. Narrator POV. A light enveloped Ultimate Spider Monkey, which changed into Gravitack. This same active his gravitational powers created his own orbit to enter his planetoid form. Hank's feathers and a powerful and colossal flare of Endeavor were attracted to Gravitack and began to spin around him. Damn, a new transformation, said Hack, taking distance. Endeavor just growled and engulfed his fists in flames, which began to melt everything around him. Izuku just snorted and rose into the air. The fire that was swirling around him and disintegrating the feathers began to spin even faster and move away from Izuku's body, which was already feeling the suffocating heat. A perfect ring of fire was created, which he arranged to point at Endeavor. Endeavor saw this and closed his eyes and stood on the sidelines. Izuku, who noticed this, smiled cheerfully. Smash! The alien opened his eyes in surprise upon hearing that scream behind him. The civilians were like a rock sphere in the sky hitting the slums and red zones, in an abandoned area. Izuku crashed into a 20-story building, dilapidated and abandoned. He still kept his powers activated and kept everything standing. Behind him, a family of indecent people. Get out of here! Izuku shouted angrily, scaring them and causing them to flee the place. Meanwhile, outside the Addition, Almight landed on another rooftop, with Endeavor a few feet away from him and Hank flying over them. The flames of Endeavor ignited and even hotter fire gathered at his fingertips. Wait for everyone to evacuate, Hank said, relaxed. How can you be so relaxed? That monster will do something to the civilians, Almight said angrily, to which Hank laughed. He would never hurt civilians, it's his first rule, Hank said calmly. But a flash of red light caught his attention. It came from the building. Endeavor snorted, and when he saw that the last homeless person seeking shelter left the building, he unleashed his attack. Threads of fire whipped the building where Izuku was. These cut through the structure of the building and turned it into more than just squares, before exploding into fiery explosions. That won't do, Hank said, narrowing his eyes. And what the buck do you know? Endeavor asked angrily. Don't doubt your companions, said a voice in front of them all. Looking ahead, they found Gravitack turned into its supreme form. It had lost its legs, and is now blue with several shades of the same. Below its arms the colors of its unevolved form remained. Around it, planetoids rotate at high speed. They were the same as Gravitack's head. But these each had different personalities and colors that degrade to a dark grayish. Gravitack's core is located inside its mouth, glowing crimson and releasing a white gas. Both it and its planetoids have energy orbits, Gravitack 2 purple, crossed and forming an X, the red planetoid a green one, the yellow one a red orbit and the blue planetoid a yellow one. All over Gravitack's body protuberances in the form of sharp spikes were formed. The Ultimatrix is located in its lower jaw. He was rubbing against the sky, with all the wreckage from the buildings spinning around him. At the same time, the fire from Endeavor and the shockwaves from the explosions were also spinning around him. Ha ha ha, what an idiot, said the yellow planetoid with amusement. Shut your ass, said the red planetoid with hatred towards the yellow planetoid who stuck his tongue out at him. What are you looking at, idiots? Go over there, Oni-chan will make you pay for attacking us, said the blue planetoid with superiority, looking at the heroes seriously. Shut up, dwarves, said Izuku with annoyance. But he started it, said yellow and red at the same time, the first in a childish way and the other angrily. I only threaten the heroes, said the blue planetoid, which was taken by Izuku between his hands and caressed it with a finger. No, you are okay, I was referring to your brothers, said Izuku before letting go, and blue began to spin again in Izuku's orbit. The other two planetoids only insulted the two of them. Izuku completely ignored them and just prepared himself. But he ignored them and put them aside. More when he saw how All Might was going against him. Hank threw his feathers and Endeavor positioned itself behind him, throwing a flame. Ha 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 ha, is that the best they have? Said Izuku with amusement. With a simple movement of his finger all the attacks were deflected. The shockwaves from the explosions moved and hit All Might in his chest wound, sending him crashing into the street. On the other hand, Hank had to avoid the flames that Izuku threw at him from the fire that orbited around him. Ha ha ha, how I love to leave your kind for the main course, isn't it fun, second son? Said Izuku, turning and facing Endeavor. I'll kill you, you damn bastard! Exclaimed Endeavor with great anger, going against Izuku. This one just kept him in place, before throwing him into the streets, next to All Might, who was barely getting back up. On the other hand, Hank remained in the dead zone to attack. All the feathers he threw against Izuku were returned to him without any difficulty. He still had a connection with them, but an invisible force did not allow him to guide them as he should. Do you think you can do that? With just a little effort, I'm capable of doing this, Izuku said, smiling. He raised both arms, leaving a space between them, where all the debris, fire, and Hank's feathers began to accumulate above him. They compressed into a single point as they formed a giant ball that began to spin at high and increasing speeds. Suddenly, to the horror of anyone who saw it, they heard a sound of destruction followed by a suction sound, which disappeared instantly. The three heroes watched in horror as the space-time singularity in the alien's hands emitted these electrical banks, and all the space around them became distorted and compressed inside it. He had created a black hole which he could control. Even a fool would know what this meant. Now I ask you, how do you plan to fight these heroes, when they are nothing more than idiots dressed in mesh suits for fan service? Gravitak asked with amusement. After what he had shown and said, there was a somber silence. Until a loud stomp was heard and All Might was seen standing and facing the villain. We will defeat you no matter what you do to us now or in the future. We will never give up and protect peace above all in this world. All Might exclaimed, to which Izuku snorted. You can't protect people without protecting yourself, either can you protect peace when there never was any, said Izuku before making the black hole disappear, confusing the heroes. A light enveloped Izuku and he changed shape, becoming Heat Blast, which created a gigantic fireball and launched it towards the heroes, who moved out of the way and avoided the gigantic explosion of fire. Hank didn't have time to react when Heat Blast appeared and approached him at a gigantic speed thanks to the propulsion of his fire. He kicked him and charred his wings and caused him to fall downwards. Then he crossed his arms in X and covered himself from a punch from All Might, being lifted away from them too. The American hero caught his partner and took him to a safe area, while Izuku stayed with Endeavor, which was propelled flying with its flames and connected a powerful blow to the face of the Pyronite, who was sent down. But as he fell, he propelled himself upwards with his flames and went against Endeavor, while a wave of power is released from the Ultimatrix, activating its super evolution. His form changed, his rock was a bluish hue, while mouths like volcanoes emerge on his shoulders, forearms and feet, while Richer wraps his body and has more cracks in the torso. His fire is now blue and his face took a sharper shape. The Ultimatrix is located on his chest, connected by several tubes. Endeavor saw that fire, his eyes widened in surprise. Izuku noticed this and smiled, before propelling himself and dodging all of Endeavor's blows, beginning to hit him all over his body and causing major third-degree burns. Malevolent flames got sentimental on us, Izuku said mockingly, before landing a fire-powered double kick to Endeavor's stomach, causing him to spit out blood and scream in pain from the burn. Did I make you remember something? Something? Or someone? Maybe all three? Izuku asked, only provoking the anger of the number 2 hero. He tried to hit him, but Izuku only absorbed his heat and fire, and with each blow Izuku gave, he only became weaker. He was grabbed by the leg before spinning at high speed in the air and being thrown towards the ground, creating a large crater. Red clock! Exclaimed All Might going against him. I throw a punch in the air, which launched a current of air against Izuku. This only intensified the fire of the ultimate Pyronite, who smiled at All Might's surprised face. The fire is not extinguished with simple wind, All Might. There are other factors for the wind to extinguish the fire. Unfortunately, you do not have any of them on your side, Izuku said before increasing his heat and creating a colossal explosion of heat that knocked All Might to the ground weakened. After that, he stayed rubbing in the air thanks to his fire, where he sighed before raising the intensity of his flames and propelling himself with them, accompanied by a sonic boom, so that he disappeared into the distance. Time skip. God, what a headache, Izuku said with annoyance, while he threw himself down on his chair in the laboratory. Albedo appeared beside him and stroked his head. Okay, you can rest today. How about you take a break tomorrow? Said Albedo with a smile, which vanished when she heard a snort from Izuku. I have to go to the orphanage with Gwen and see how things are going there, Izuku said, turning around in his chair and putting his forearm over his eyes. Albedo sighed before sitting next to Izuku. Sleep, it's past your sleeping hours, you can skip school tomorrow, Albedo said, stroking Izuku's hair. Without him objecting, he let her carry him and place his head on her thighs, where Albedo continued to caress his hair. Izuku closed his eyes and just settled on his partner's legs. I have things to do. Sensei asked me if he could stay with me in class. According to him, he has to do some things for a capture and construction case, Izuku said sleepily without clarifying her words. You mean the repairs that have to be done where you and the 3 best heroes of the country fought, and the capture thing is surely to make a plan with Tennyson and capture you, Albedo said calmly, if I felt like Izuku turned around and now looked her directly in the eyes. That's not good. Tennyson helping them only means that sooner or later Azimuth will join them. He sighs heavily. I have to start making plans for contrition, at least 123,432 of them, Izuku said. Albedo just shook his head and held him by the head, before turning him around. Now Izuku was looking at the girl's belly. Rest, I'll do it myself, Albedo said calmly and softly. I'll do it, I can't depend on you all the time, said Izuku, slowly closing his eyes. No doubt he liked the caresses his partner was giving him. He is extremely skilled. It's not bad to be independent from other people, or to be able to achieve it by yourself, but you have to know that even being a super genius with a lot of potential, you still need help from others to achieve your goals, explained Albedo with a slight smile. Unfortunately for her, Izuku had already fallen asleep, to which she sighed. But more than a sigh, it was a yawn, where she brought her hand to her mouth to avoid it. Dream? Hey, I never had one. I'm actually an organic and living being now. Who would have thought? A human being able to create artificial life perfectly on the first try. He. Without a doubt you have incredible potential, darling, Albedo said to herself, before settling down and leaning her back on the couch, where she ended up closing her eyes tiredly. Some time later. Okay, let's start the day, Izuku said calmly, while taking a chip and inserting it into the core of the Ultimatrix. Meanwhile, Albedo is lying on the couch, still asleep. But suddenly she opens her eyes to feel how the Ultimatrix is updating. Getting up heavily from the chair, he looked ahead, where he saw Izuku holding a compressed version of the latest version of the Ultimatrix. The neon isn't too bright? Albedo asked curiously, getting up from the couch and scratching her belly as she yawned and walked towards Izuku. Yes, but don't be surprised. After all, we use a gigantic power source. Apart from that, with this design, the Ultimatrix and Omnitrix would not synchronize unless the core of the Ultimatrix is exposed, Izuku said calmly, as did Albedo, yawning. Keep sleeping, Albedo said with a poker face. I'm running late for school. Luckily I already had this ready before yesterday, Izuku said before stretching. Just keep sleeping, Albedo said, sighing. Izuku just shook his head and laughed a little. There is work to do today, said Izuku with a smile that made Albedo sigh. Fine, then go, but take care of yourself. I'll stay here. I want to continue experimenting with this body, said Albedo, exhausted before going back to the armchair. Okay, see you in a few hours, said Izuku, heading to a donut far from the laboratory. I almost forgot. He returns to Izuku's side and gives him a kiss on the cheek, surprising the teenager and making him blush. Good luck. Albedo finished saying goodbye before turning around and going to the couch. Why did you do that? Izuku asked, embarrassed. Izuku, this is nothing, just a gesture of camaraderie. Besides, I think it's more serious that I'm aware of every inch of your body than a simple goodbye kiss, Albedo said calmly, sitting on the armchair, where her clothes changed to a loose blouse and long baggy pants, along with slippers. Why, yeah, you're right. He quickly shakes his head, wiping away his blush of embarrassment. But anyway, see you later, and good luck to you too. Izuku said before being enveloped in a red light. Unlike before, this time it escaped from his silhouette and illuminated the place. Its place was replaced by cold, which would have more fur than before. Its wings were deployed from its cape/hood form and it took flight, crossing everything that surrounded the laboratory. Some time later. Is all that necessary? Asked Gwen, seeing Izuku carrying a large bag with him. Yes, it is, Izuku said calmly, before starting to walk. By the way, did you see the news? The top 3 were easily defeated yesterday by the villain Red Clock, said Gwen calmly and somewhat thoughtfully. Although Izuku didn't even flinch. Yes, I saw it live last night. It really is a shame, although I really don't care much. I doubt that guy will become a threat that causes problems in my life, Izuku said disinterestedly, to which Gwen nodded. That gave me a doubt. How is the job of hero equipment makers? Do they live and work? I mean, they can literally be kidnapped by villains at any time, Gwen said doubtfully. Izuku just shrugged. And who says that doesn't happen? 10 Team Hero workers were kidnapped last night, but the news was overshadowed by the defeat of the top 3 heroes, said Izuku, sighing, surprising his friend at the same time. Isn't anything being done for them? Gwen asked worriedly. Izuku nodded calmly. Relax, they're fine right now, they were saved about 3 hours ago, Izuku said calmly, stopping next to Gwen, who stopped next to him. What a relief, Gwen said, sighing to relax. Well, leaving those issues aside, here we are, said Izuku, smiling, seeing the dilapidated orphanage in front of them. You know, I still think it's cute and brave that you decided to help them, Gwen said with a warm, loving smile. What do you want me to say? I can't just let go of people who need help like that, Izuku said before walking forward and knocking on the door. Yeah, and that's something I like about you, Gwen said without realizing, which confused Izuku. Do you like that about me? Izuku asked, tilting his head in confusion, causing the girl to blush deeply in embarrassment. I didn't mean that, well yes, but not that way, Gwen said nervously and ashamed of herself. At that very moment, his salvation was a blind blonde who opened the door. Hi, I see you've arrived, Mr. Midoriya, the woman said, making a reference. So much hospitality is not necessary, besides I am only 15 years old, said Izuku, embarrassed. He was not in his role as Red Clock to feel satisfaction at flattery, reverence, applause, etc. I can't help it, it's the way I was raised, Isabella said calmly, to which Izuku sighed silently. Well, we can go in, I'd like to talk to you a little more privately, said Izuku calmly, receiving a nod from the woman. She let them through and both teenagers entered, being directed again to a room away from the dining room and alone. What did you want to talk about? Isabella asked. Well, it wouldn't be bad to know how they ended up like this. I mean, what happened for the orphanage to be in this state? Gwen asked, tilting her head curiously, with Izuku nodding beside her. Isabella hesitated. She had practically no obligation to tell them, but then, wouldn't they get angry and tell the police about the state of the orphanage and what Suburi did? She had the sword at her neck against the wall. Well, we had financial problems after a personal event, and even before the orphanage was given to me, it was also in a certain state of disrepair, Isabella said, a little nervously. I understand, I've already decided I'll help you, said Izuku with a smile and with his only visible eye closed, while extending his hand. Gwen, who saw it, blushed slightly and looked away. It's not unnecessary, Isabella said nervously. I know, but I will still do it. I want to help them. I know that there are more people out there in difficult situations, and I want to help and guide them so that they improve their lives by themselves, that they achieve their own goals, and that they are independent of others, but even I know that it is not possible. I am alone against the entire world, one human, one man, against an entire species, and that I do not have the necessary resources, both economic, as well as an image and respect to be able to guide others. Lets out a sigh. That is why, even if it is difficult for me, slowly and surely, I will undoubtedly achieve, to help people no matter what. It is my dream since I was 4 years old, or rather, it is since I can remember," said Izuku with a bright smile, honest and beautiful. Gwen opened her eyes in surprise and shock. She could literally see how her friend's aura went from green with red on his right arm, to a pure gold highlighted with white details. It was inevitable for her not to stay there, and watch him in a daze. "I don't know what to say," Isabella said, surprised and moved. "So please accept my help. I promise I will improve everything around here," said Izuku with a smile and a soft and calm voice. Not only him, she began speaking, drawing the attention of the others. "I also plan to help them," Gwen said with a smile and in a determined manner. I takes a deep breath. "Are you sure about this?" "We're complete strangers," said Isabella, distrustful and doubtful. "We don't doubt it, we're sure of it," Gwen said with encouragement. "That's right, if we see someone good in trouble, why not help them?" Izuku asked with a smile and charisma. "Ha, if they knew who I really was they wouldn't help me," Isabella thought with a sad and pained smile, sadness and pain that both teenagers noticed. "Okay, I will accept your help, without a doubt I owe you a lot with this," said Isabella, taking the hands of Gwen and Izuku, who nodded. "It's a pleasure to help," both teenagers said with a bright smile. It was a curse that the woman was blind and could not see them. To see their determined smiles and the flames of determination, bravery, honor and kindness in their eyes. Chapter 21, Medical Talk after the Childhood Discussion. Narrator POV. "Don't expect this," Gwen said with a drop of sweat. In front of her and Izuku, Isabella was standing with some documents. I'd feel bad if they worked here without being employees of the orphanage," Isabella said sadly. Izuku and Gwen just shrugged at that. "I don't see why not," said Izuku calmly and with a succulent in his hand. In just a second he had already read everything and signed to see that there wasn't the typical small print that condemns him. "Although I crossed out the pay part." Gwen signed it too, and without Isabella noticing, she had also crossed out that part. "Thank you for accepting. They will start tomorrow if it is not too much trouble for you," said Isabella, nodding calmly. They could both feel the rejection he had right now. "Okay, then we'll come tomorrow, Isabella. It's already getting a bit late," said Gwen with a smile and calmly, getting up from the seat where she was, being followed by Izuku, who nodded. "Okay, then see you tomorrow," Isabella said, nodding and smiling softly. Some time later. "Well, here I leave you," Izuku said with a smile to Gwen, who sighed. "Why do you always walk me home?" Gwen asked, turning to look at her friend. I saw them do it in a movie." He shrugs. "So I decided to do it too," said Izuku calmly. At that, Gwen raised an eyebrow. "Izuku, do you know what it means to be a gentleman?" Gwen asked cautiously. A disappointment that he didn't know he could feel, other than seeing Ben waste his study skills, formed when he saw Izuku shake his head. "Well, now I see why you're not so good with women," Gwen said before shaking her head and smiling. Izuku just tilted his head, not understanding what she meant. Gwen calmly took his cheeks and placed a kiss on the forehead of the raven with green highlights, who was embarrassed, and a blush formed from his cheeks to his ears on his head. "Why did you do that?" Izuku asked nervously. "What's wrong with it? It's just a gesture of trust between friends," Gwen said with a kind and soft smile, making Izuku swallow and look away. "If you say so," Izuku said doubtfully. That's right, but let's leave the subject aside. See you tomorrow. It's the trip to the USJ," said Gwen, to which Izuku nodded. "See you tomorrow," Izuku said calmly, to which Gwen nodded and headed to her house, where she entered and closed the door behind her. I wonder what it is to be a knight. Sounds interesting," Izuku said before turning around and starting to walk. As he walked, he heard his phone vibrate in his jacket, so he took it out and saw that there were 2 messages. "I need you to go shopping and come back quickly to make dinner. Izuku Midoriya, parent. Okasan said she would send you shopping. I'll go with you. I'll wait for you at the left turn to the house with the money. Kane Midoriya, individual with blood relation." Izuku sighed after reading the messages his mother and sister had sent him, so he just quickened his pace a little. He wished he didn't have to have a civilian and villainous life as an antisocial secret scientist, so he could focus all his time on his laboratory. Thought of in his laboratory. What is Albedo doing right now? Izuku wondered curiously. In the laboratory. Should I search the internet for how to teach someone how to feel attracted to more affection or a loving relationship? She lets out a sigh. I sound desperate, but whatever, I'll see how to make Izuku pay more attention to that and not be stupid and be very harsh or dense about the whole subject. She pauses briefly before turning on a hologram with TV symbols. For now I'll just watch my telenovela and then the Hammer of War 40,000 movie from the year 2024. It was nice to be able to recover things from centuries past in that abandoned city. Then I have to convince Izuku to make a profit from all this. Albedo said to herself, before a robotic arm brought a batch of popcorn and another arm several soft drinks and sodas. Back with Izuku. There it is, Izuku said, looking in the distance at his sister who was running towards him with a smile. You're finally here! Exclaimed Kane, jumping to hug a shocked Izuku. He blinked a few times before looking at the girl with an unreadable expression. What are you doing? Izuku asked, tilting his head, now curious about the unknown display of affection. None of his family ever showed affection to him, except between the day he was born and the age of 4, maximum 5. With a change in Kane of shyness and shame when he turned 11 and after he found the Ultimatrix. Whatever, let's go shopping, Izuku said, slightly pushing Kane away, with a frown. Are you okay? Her sister asked worriedly. Yes, I am, just a little tired. I had to do a lot of work in class besides. They asked me for help after class. That's why I didn't come with you. Izuku answers calmly, lying about the last part. If you say so, it's better that we go quickly, so you can rest once we've bought everything for dinner, Kane said doubtfully, but she changed to a small smile and a lively tone. Izuku just shook his head with a sigh. I have to make dinner, Izuku said calmly. Then I'll do it. So let's go, Kane said before pulling Izuku, who blinked confused and surprised at the girl's change in attitude. He just ended up sighing, feeling a headache starting to appear. Some time later. I think that's all, said Izuku, looking at the shopping list and how everything was already marked. Then he saw the bags he had and his sister who arrived shortly after with him. He analyzed the bags for a second and nodded to see what they had. Well, let's go pay this and go back home, Izuku said calmly. Hi. Kane nodded before starting to follow her brother, who was the first to move and lead her to the cash register. Good night, little ones, said the cashier to see Izuku. Good evening, Mississippi. Izuku returned the greeting, nodding. Okay, put your things here, I'll give you the total price in a moment, said the cashier, to which both brothers nodded. It didn't take them long and they had already paid for everything, before putting it away in the sturdy cloth bag they had. Before they leave, the cashier called to see how the two teenagers got ready to leave. Is something wrong? Izuku asked curiously. Take this, dear, open it at home or far away from here, said the cashier, handing him a piece of paper that Izuku took curiously. Okay, Izuku said doubtfully and curiously, before leaving with his sister. He just saw what happened and remained silent. Once outside the market, he saw his brother, who seemed to be calm at all times. A feeling of unease came over her when she saw that Izuku kept the little note in his jacket. Literally, a person has just shown more attraction and, in a way, affection to her brother than she has in these years. Don't start crying now, Izuku said, sighing as he watched Kane's head bow. No, I'm not crying, Kane said, sighing before looking up. So? Izuku asked, causing Kane to gulp and take a deep breath. Sorry, I'm really sorry, Kane said wistfully. What are you apologizing for? Izuku asked, frowning and looking at her. Of everything, I'm sorry for everything I did to you when we were little, Kane said, looking straight into Izuku's eyes. Izuku didn't say anything. The lasso grabbed her wrist by the hand and pulled her into an alley. Now what are you going to do to me? Izuku asked seriously, having a hand next to his sister's head, cornering her against the wall of the alley. What do you mean? Kane asked nervously. Even if Izuku is 10 centimeters shorter than her. What do I mean? I mean how you try to trick me, gain my trust and then throw me into the damn mud like you always did," said Izuku seriously and coldly. "I'm not going to do that. And I've never done it," Kane responds, defending herself. "Seriously? Hump. I see you forgot that time you were a total bucking angel a month before my 8th birthday, and that same day you told me you were waiting for me at school with a surprise, and what a surprise it was, the dog shit you threw on me. And yes, I know. The plan was originally requested by Katsumi, and someone else designed it since her bucking ate for a brain can't, but you were the bucking hitch who was the key to all of this," Izuku said angrily, his right eye shining under his patch-shaped visor. He meditated. Kane didn't notice this and just kept her gaze down, while her hair covered her eyes. "Now that I remember, there's also that time when you and the bucking explosive 8 got funny and made me a bunch of bucking love letters a month before Valentine's Day. And what bucking surprise did I get that day? That of me being a stupid ape and with the bucking hormones oxytocin and vasopressin exploding, with a damn sign that said, 'Do you want to be my mystery girlfriend?' in front of the school. So that later everyone would start making fun of me and you guys could tell your stupid plan as if you were the geniuses of the millennium." He lets out a sigh. "I don't care about your stupid words. Words are nothing more than sounds with no meaning. Actions are what count," Izuku said angrily, his right eye shining more intensely, to the point that the light came out of the visor and began to illuminate in front of him. "PLAP. I just want to ask for your forgiveness. Is it so difficult to accept that and accept that I want to fix everything?" Kane exclaimed angrily. He had given his brother a flaming slap in the face out of anger at the words and reminder of the horrible things he did in the past. Izuku just stood still, staring at Kane without saying anything. It was at that moment that she noticed how she had given him a second-degree burn, although he didn't care about this. He only saw his sister's hand, from which green embers similar to electricity energy and mixed with the fire of the quirk that she possesses. "So she has All Might's quirk. That was the section of the DNA chain that I couldn't see because other DNA chains covered it when I analyzed the idiot All Might. A quirk whose ability is to pass to another person and connect with that person's quirk so that both are later inherited by another person and repeat the circus, increasing their powers and accumulating power constantly," Izuku thought seriously, although he didn't show it. "2. It wasn't my intention," said Kane, distressed and scared, trying to bring her other hand closer to Izuku's wound. But the raven hair with green streaks held her wrist gently, before sighing softly and shaking his head. "It's not worth it, don't waste your time," Izuku said calmly, before letting go and turning around to start walking. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dash," Kane said, but she would be interrupted. "I'm not angry. I don't hate you either. I'm not going to waste my time on that," Izuku answers calmly. Kane felt the pressure in her chest at those words, so she lowered her head in anguish. "Stop right there, brats," said a voice at the entrance of the alley. Izuku just sighed in annoyance, as he reached into his jacket pocket. "What do you want?" Izuku asked coldly. "Not much, me and my friends just want the things you have, along with all your personal belongings. And of course, all the money, monkey, money, rich money," said the criminal with a smile. Izuku had to stop himself from laughing at the last thing he said, before shaking his head and taking out a gauntlet from his jacket with a thread of an unknown metal in the area where he had hit. "Ho ho ho, what's that? Is your quirk so useless that you need a weapon to defend yourself?" asked another of the criminals, on the other side of the alley and blocking the exit. "I don't need to be a genetic freak to defend myself," Izuku said angrily. "So a Quirkless, guys. This is going to be great," said another, cracking his knuckles. "Thumb. Crack. Thumb." Izuku broke the first guy's lower jaw, knocking him to the ground inconveniently. After that, he kicked another guy in the throat, causing him great pain and difficulty breathing, before the buzzing sound of electricity was heard and it was revealed that the gauntlet was also a third one. With it, he hit whoever hit him in the throat and electrified him, leaving him unconscious to the ground. "I don't need to be a genetic phenomenon to become your worst nightmare," Izuku said coldly and without any emotion, his right eye making itself known for its bloody crimson glow. Following that, the sound of fire was heard and it was seen how Kane had an unconscious subject next to her due to pain, and with his mouth burned. Great, well then, let's call for reinforcements, said one of the remaining criminals, snapping his fingers. At that moment, more thugs and criminals appeared, closing off both ends of the alley. Izuku behind me! Kane ordered with seriousness and authority. Focus on your side and for your own good, I'll take care of this side, said Izuku, cracking his knuckles and walking towards the entrance of the alley, where 5 criminals are waiting for him. Wait! Kane exclaimed, but she was grabbed by the hair and thrown against the wall by a thug. We finished this quickly. From what little I can see due to the lack of light, this hitch has a nice ass, said the criminal holding Kane by the hair. Crack! His jaw was broken by Kane, whose arm was wrapped in green embers and red lines, while her fire was empowered and slowly turned red. Meanwhile, Izuku hit a thug with a blow from his electric gauntlet. He saw how he covered him, to which he grabbed him by the face and jumped to give him a knee, before turning on his neck and connecting a kick to another and breaking free from the subject who made a base for him. But not before electrifying him and causing him to fall unconscious. After that he jumped back, preventing a criminal from cutting him in half with mantis sides for arms. But in a quick and agile way, Izuku connected a punch that sent the criminal with mantis arms flying backwards more than 10 meters, leaving him out of the alley and unconscious from the electric shock. The wielder of the Ultimatrix was grabbed below the shoulders and pulled backwards, where he bent his body, concentrated his weight on it to lower him a little and ended up connecting a double knee to the nose of the subject who held him, causing a crack of broken bone. He dropped Izuku, who spun in the air and landed on his feet, before doing an uppercut and breaking the man's jaw, while electrifying him, causing him to fall unconscious to the ground. Last chance, go and cry with your moms, or I'll break your faces, Izuku said, cracking his knuckles, watching as the criminals came at him, screaming in anger. The first one transforms his fist into metal, to which Izuku sees that he threw a punch. He does the same. Both connected their punch with the others, but with a detail, and that is that Izuku threw the punch with his electric gauntlet, and he released an electric shock that suddenly left the criminal unconscious. I'm going to kill you, bastard, said the last one with hatred, electric sparks appearing in his hands. Izuku just smiled and got into a fighting stance, while wiping the blood on his cheek with his thumb. Come to my stupid ape, said Izuku, agreed confidently, nanotechnology running through his jacket in which red neon lines were present. Meanwhile, the 3 of the 7 criminals Kane was fighting were lying on the ground. She was holding her left shoulder, which had a spike stuck in it. She saw this and growled angrily. Flashback. Remember, sister, you don't have to remove an object stuck in any part of your body, or else you will bleed to death. Stay here while I go get mom and dad, said a 3-year-old Izuku to a crying Kane, while he had a branch stuck in his right hand. End of flashback. Kane sighed, before taking hold of the spike and carefully breaking it off, leaving some of it to be removed, but not so much that it would be a hindrance. Hee, you are strong, tough girl, said one of the criminals with a strange jaw for Kane. I am more than I seem, said Kane seriously, lighting her fists on fire. Let's see how you are in bed when we're done, said another of them, creating thorns on his body. But he couldn't avoid a flare of Kane, which made him crash into a wall and be knocked out instantly. Another flame went against another of the criminals, but he launched a stream of water that extinguished the fire of the Midoriya, who retreated, avoiding a hammer blow that turned her into rock. Unfortunately, she could not avoid a powerful shot of water, which made her crash against the wall, and then fall in pain to her knees. She tried to get up, but a powerful blow from a rock to the stomach made her spit saliva. But even so, she endured the pain and put her hands together, while the One for All was activated and fired a flame forward, seriously damaging the rock criminal in front of her and causing him to be defeated, and even to crash against a wall and make it crack. He got up from the ground and faced the criminal with the water Quirk, who smiled at him slyly. Good Quirk, powerful, but with many weaknesses, but your total lack of experience is noticeable, said the criminal, preparing his water. His remaining companion stood next to him, as his hands transformed into guns. Kane concentrated her fire in her left hand and threw her palm forward, releasing an explosion of heat, which was destroyed with a blast of water at high speed. Kane tried to dodge it, but the criminal's partner shot, and at that Kane was scared and stood still in her place, being hit by the blast of water. "Really pathetic," the water criminal said in disappointment as he walked forward. But he felt a sting on his neck. Bringing his hand to his neck, he pulled out something that had been stuck there a little. It was a small pin, which made a beep and released a discharge of electric current, which knocked the unconscious criminal to the ground. "Really pathetic," Izuku said in a disappointed manner as he walks forward. Behind him, all the criminals he fought against are unconscious and defeated, he with only blood stains that are not his. "Stay back!" exclaimed the villain with guns in his hands, pointing at Izuku, who only snorted annoyed. "Do you think you can hurt me?" Izuku asked boredly. His visor showed a warning of energy shield against hostility, activated. But on the other hand, his visor detected that the subject had his hand behind his back and sent an SOS to a number about 300 meters from where they were. "Pathetic," said Izuku, shaking his head and starting to walk towards the criminal. Bang! Izuku opened his eyes wide as he felt blood splashing onto his face. He blinked in confusion and surprise, holding onto the body of the person who had crossed paths with the shot that was headed his way. "You wanted actions, here you have them, since you don't accept my words," Kane said as blood dripped from her mouth. She found herself in the arms of a shocked Izuku, stained by her blood, the girl having a hole from the bullet that had pierced her chest. "Wow, I wasn't expecting this at all, ha 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 ha, this is very touching, pretty girl, nice ass, I would love to try it," said the criminal, sighing and with a tone of disappointment. After that, he raised his arm and pointed it at Izuku's head, who had his head down. His left hand glowed red and transformed into a giant metal one, which released a time dome around Kane, before returning to normal, and he got up from the ground, while keeping his head down. "Shit! Liar, you have a quirk!" said the criminal before starting to shoot. A flash of red light appeared in the alley. In it, Izuku was replaced by a blue-skinned alien, wearing an exoskeleton of the said color, barnacles on his shoulders, spikes on his forearms and hands, which are composed of various plants, petal claws, as well as spikes on his feet and calves, arms, lower torso and legs, black. On his torso the image of 4 eyes, with crab legs. His head has 4 eyes in the form of a line, with a hood that covers it, and 2 kinds of long sections. Around his head in the goth, you can see through a translucent exoskeleton how the water flows. The symbol of the Ultimatrix is between the tips of the crab legs on his abdomen. Water Hazard walks towards the criminal. Your bullets bounce off his exoskeleton, and he just walks towards the criminal, who retreats in terror. "Get away, you evil demon!" the criminal shouted in fear of knowing who the person he tried to rob was. But he was held by the abdomen, while Izuku's claws dug into his skin, causing him to scream in pain. But without mercy or pity, Izuku fired a powerful blast of water, which sent the criminal flying into a wall and through it. Izuku continued walking before starting to run. He broke through the wall and grabbed the criminal by the neck, passing by a bar counter and a bunch of delinquents, criminals, even surprised villains. Izuku grabbed the criminal and used him as a shield to break through the next wall and the next ones. He broke through 10 walls in total, before throwing the criminal to the ground, where Izuku began to constantly bite him. His fists were enveloped by hot water that caused 3rd-degree burns on the face, neck and torso of the criminal, who was dying and screaming in pain. All while Izuku held back from killing him and making him suffer. When he finished, he realized the result of all this. He saw the criminal lying below him and wounded, dying, now suffering the silence, possibly dying. Izuku just sighed before getting up from the ground, turned around and saw more people approaching him. He just watched as the villains looked at him seriously, others with hatred. Izuku just sighed and shouted in anger, surprising everyone present and scaring most of them. "Today I had a good day that went to shit in a flash. I still have time to help the suicidal girl. The time bubble will cease to exist after 10 minutes, plenty of time to vent with you all," said Water Hazard before changing shape, turning into an arm rod, destroying everything around him, wall and ceiling. "You better resist my wrath," Izuku said with great anger. Some time later, And that's what happened, Izuku said to a police officer and then sighed to calm down. Okay, kid, your parents will be here shortly. We will return tomorrow when your sister wakes up to question her, said the policeman and then left the room. Izuku just watched him leave, then sighed again and turned his head, seeing Kane on a stretcher, while she had several bandages on her chest. Only after seeing her for a few moments did he turn to look down and just stayed thoughtful about everything that happened. Relax, little one, she'll be fine, said the recovery girl heroine. I know you used your quirk on her, Izuku said, sighing. You relax, she will be fine. Besides, the Yui will not allow her to die. It is part of the contract when she was enrolled in the academy, said the heroine calmly, to which Izuku nodded. I understand, said Izuku, looking at the ground without emotion. By the way, a silly and somewhat late question, how attached are you to her? Recovery girl asked with curiosity. Twin brothers, yes, we look alike, but we are not twins. She is a woman and I am a man. Apart from that, her hair is completely green and mine is black with green highlights, said Izuku without spirit. I know, that's very noticeable. I thought they were cousins for a few moments. Your hair isn't very common, kid, said recovery girl approaching Izuku, who made a bitter laugh. Yes, when we were little we were often mistaken for cousins. Some people even made jokes about it or asked silly questions, Izuku said. Like which ones? Recovery girl asked curiously. What a shame, with your sister you do it with more enthusiasm than with your cousin. Will you go live in the north when you're older? Lucky you, you don't have to look much for your better half anymore. He lets out a sigh. I never understood what they mean, Izuku said tiredly and annoyed, settling into his seat. Recovery girl just shook her head and sat down next to the teenager. God, every generation is worse morally, said recovery girl tiredly. Yeah, what were people like before my generation or the one before? Izuku asked curiously. I'm not that old, brats. Sighs. But whatever, it's not that different from this one, morally better in certain aspects than this one, replied recovery girl with exasperation. I can imagine, unfortunately I can imagine, said Izuku before sighing heavily. Brat, calm down, she'll be fine, said recovery, patting Izuku on the back, who just shook his head. It's not that, it's just that I shit, said Izuku angrily, unable to voice what he wanted to say. Did you fight before the accident happened? Recovery girl asked Izuku, who sighed and dropped into his seat. I wouldn't call it an accident, Izuku said grumpily. It doesn't matter what it was, only the beginning and the end matter. Those two things are the most important in matters like this, and a few more things, said recovery girl, shaking her head. Yes, I know, Izuku said now, changing his grumpy attitude to a discouraged one. So, what caused you to argue? Recovery girl asked the teenager, who looked up to see his sister on the hospital gurney. She is like most people, she hates Quirkless. She made my childhood hell with a girl I fell in love with. Oh, that's what I think. I don't know much about love or things like that to know if love is such a thing or just physical attraction or emotional dependent attachment, said Izuku with difficulty. You should learn more about these topics. At your age it's normal to look for love, said recovery girl, to which Izuku just shrugged. That topic never caught my attention. I never gave it any importance, and I never had time to see what it's like. I have better things to do than worry about someone else in my life to that degree of unity, Izuku explained, sighing. Well, I understand. I can only recommend that you learn more about the subject, but for now, let's continue, said recovery, nodding at what Izuku said. She apologized for everything. I confronted her about everything she did to me in my life. We argued. She hurt me with her quirk by mistake. Points to her cheek, which has a medical patch. And I said something that I don't know how, but I hurt her. After that we were surrounded by criminals. She fought against them, and she got in the way of a shot that was going towards me. Some time later Red Clock arrived and let us go while she fought against the villains in the area, explained Izuku. A lot of information for a simple question that only Sentra is in part of the events, said recovery girl with a drop of sweat. Sorry, Izuku apologized sadly. Don't apologize, it's okay. You're still not very emotionally well after everything that happened, recovery girl said, to which Izuku nodded. After that, there was a period of silence between the two of them, until the old woman spoke again. What do you plan to do now with his apology? The recovery girl asked the raven-haired boy with green highlights. I don't know what to do in these situations. I was never good at dealing with my emotions and everything related, said Izuku, sighing. Well then, do you want some advice? I asked. Izuku just nodded. First, organize everything that is in your mind. Think not only 2 times, but 10 times what you will do. Meditate as much as you want. Give yourself time to think and give her time. Perhaps their relationship as siblings is damaged by what happened in the past. But it does not mean that they cannot start from scratch. Try to focus and calm down. Control your emotions and learn to deal with them. Actions show more than words. She showed it. Now, it is your decision whether to do the right or wrong thing for their relationship, said recovery girl before getting up from her seat and starting to walk. How do I know what is right and wrong? Do I decide based on society's values or what people say on the internet? Izuku asked, confused. What do you think is right for you in this case? Recovery girl asked with a smile. I don't know, I think I accept, Izuku said, confused. Is that what you think, or is it what this society instilled in you about pure morals and a heart of gold? At those words, Izuku didn't know what to say. Think about it carefully and follow my advice. Everything takes time, and what happened between you two has or doesn't have a solution, and only time will decide that. Recovery girl finished speaking before leaving the room. Izuku just watched her leave. Then he saw his sister spiraling calmly on her stretcher. He just sighed to relax and settled into his seat. At the same time, the door was flung open. Kane! Hisashi exclaimed with concern as he watched his daughter lying unconscious on the medical stretcher. He approached her with fear and began to check her. Seeing that she was okay, he tried to wake her up, but he couldn't. Izuku, seeing his father's desperation, just sighed. She's okay, just unconscious for a few hours. Rest assured that she'll be awake by tomorrow, Izuku said calmly. Bang! Izuku was knocked to the ground with a blow to his exposed eye from his father. You're a bucking useless. Look at the shit you caused yourself because of your shitty existence. Now she's like this, and she may not become a heroine in the future because of your status as a Deku, Hisashi exclaimed with hatred. I never asked her to get in the way, Izuku exclaimed angrily, holding the bruised area. Yes, you're right, she's a retarded fool, but you're a piece of shit that we had to abort, Hisashi said angrily. Izuku just clenched his fists before getting up from the ground. Hisashi never saw it, he just felt him fall to the ground and a sharp pain appeared on his face before he fell unconscious. Izuku kept his arm raised with his hand in the shape of a fist, while looking at the ground. He sighed with anguish and anger. She's not a retarded fool, Izuku said before lowering his arm and seeing his father unconscious on the ground. After that he turned to look at the cameras and sighed heavily. Now he had more work to do, now because of his outburst of anger.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.